The champagne glass shattered against marble floor, just as Clara Bennett placed her wedding ring into another woman's perfectly manicured hand. 300 wealthy guests froze mid-conversation, cameras lifted like weapons. Her billionaire husband's face drained of color as his carefully constructed empire cracked open in real time. Live, public, irreversible. But this wasn't just about a cheating husband. Hidden in Nathaniel Cross's empire were crimes that could destroy them both. Illegal contracts carrying Clara's forged signature, and one mysterious billionaire who'd been watching everything unfold. If you stay until the end, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The October wind cut through Chicago's downtown corridor like broken glass. Clara Bennett stood outside the Sinclair ballroom, staring at golden light spilling through tall windows, watching shadows of wealthy strangers move inside like figures in a music box she'd never quite fit into. Her black dress had cost 2 weeks' worth of tips from the diner where she still worked mornings. The fabric pulled tight across her shoulders because she'd lost weight these past months without noticing. Her reflection in the glass doors showed a 30-year-old woman who looked simultaneously younger and older than she should. Younger in the face, older in the eyes. 7 years. 7 years married to Nathaniel Cross, and she was about to walk into her own birthday party feeling like an uninvited guest. Clara's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "He's bringing her tonight. Thought you should know." She already knew. She'd known for 6 months, ever since she found the credit card statements hidden in his office drawer. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry she'd never received. The evidence had stacked up like unpaid bills until denial became mathematically impossible. The ballroom doors swung open. A blast of warmth and expensive perfume hit her face. "Mrs. Cross!" The event coordinator rushed forward, clipboard clutched like a shield. "We've been waiting. Your husband arrived 20 minutes ago. He's—" The woman's expression flickered. "He's at the main table." Clara forced her lips into something resembling a smile. "Of course he is." The ballroom was excessive in that specific way only old Chicago money could achieve. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses, flowers flown in from somewhere unnecessarily distant, champagne towers that seemed designed purely to demonstrate waste. 300 guests mingled beneath vaulted ceilings, their laughter sharp and performative. And there, at the center table beneath the largest chandelier, sat her husband. Nathaniel Cross, at 32, looked like he'd been designed by a committee of people who'd never experienced actual hardship. Tall, dark-haired, expensively suited, with the kind of conventional handsomeness that photographed well and inspired trust in investors. He'd built his commercial real estate empire through a combination of inherited capital and ruthless expansion that the business journals called aggressive, when they meant willing to destroy competitors without hesitation. But it wasn't Nathaniel who made Clara's stomach drop. It was the woman sitting beside him, occupying the seat that should have been empty, saved for the birthday girl who'd just arrived. She was beautiful in that maintained, expensive way. Blonde hair that moved like it had been individually programmed. A red dress cut to display ownership rather than sexuality. Diamonds that caught the light with practiced precision. She leaned toward Nathaniel, whispering something that made him smile, her hand resting possessively on his forearm. The guests nearest their table had gone quiet, watching, waiting. Clara felt the temperature in the room shift as heads turned. Conversation stuttered and died. 300 pairs of eyes tracked her movement across the marble floor. She walked slowly, deliberately, her heels clicking like a countdown. Nathaniel looked up. For just a moment, maybe half a second, something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. Then it hardened into the expression she'd learned to recognize over 7 years of marriage, cold calculation pretending to be concern. "Clara." He didn't stand. "You're late." "It's my birthday party," she said quietly. "I didn't realize there was a schedule." The woman in red smiled, sharp and triumphant. "Nathaniel was just telling me about the surprise he planned for you. Weren't you, darling?" Darling. The word landed like a slap. Clara's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her sides, felt the outline of her wedding ring through the thin fabric of her dress. 7 years she'd worn that ring. 7 years of charity galas and business dinners, and playing the role of grateful wife who'd married up, who should be thankful every single day that a billionaire had chosen a girl from the South Side. A nobody whose father died when she was 12 and whose mother cleaned houses to keep the lights on. The surprise, Nathaniel said smoothly, is that I've invited some special guests tonight, people I wanted you to meet. He gestured broadly at the room, but Clara understood the real message. You're surrounded. You're outnumbered. These are my people, my world. You're just visiting. A waiter appeared with champagne. Clara took a glass she had no intention of drinking, just to have something to hold that wasn't Nathaniel's throat. Aren't you going to introduce us? The woman in red asked, her voice sugary with false innocence. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Clara, this is Vanessa Morrison. She's been consulting on the Lakeshore Development Project. Consulting? Clara tasted the word. Is that what we're calling it? Vanessa's smile didn't waver, but something predatory flashed in her eyes. I've heard so much about you. Nathaniel says you used to work at a diner before you married. How charming. The condescension was expertly delivered, wrapped in a compliment's packaging. Clara had encountered this specific breed of cruelty before, the kind wealthy women deployed like precision weapons, always careful to maintain plausible deniability. I still work there, Clara said evenly, Tuesdays and Thursdays. The coffee's better than whatever they're serving here. Vanessa blinked, momentarily thrown. Nathaniel's expression darkened. Clara works because she wants to, he said, addressing the nearby tables that were absolutely listening. Even though there's no financial need, I admire her. Independence. The way he said independence made it sound like a character flaw. Someone nearby coughed. Clara caught movement in her peripheral vision, phones being discreetly positioned, cameras activating. Of course, in this world, scandal was currency. Everyone wanted footage of the moment the poor girl finally cracked. You know what I admire? Clara set down her champagne glass. Her hand was steadier now, the initial shock crystallizing into something harder, sharper. Honestly, people who are honest about who they are and what they want. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, supremely confident. Then we have that in common. Do we? Clara reached up and slowly removed her wedding ring. The metal felt cold against her skin, lighter than she expected. 7 years reduced to 14 grams of platinum and 3 tiny diamonds she'd once thought were beautiful. The room went silent. Clara, Nathaniel's voice carried a warning. Don't do this here. Do what? She held the ring up to the light, watching it catch the chandelier's glow. Be honest? Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware this wasn't playing out according to script. Nathaniel started to stand, but Clara moved faster. She stepped forward and placed the ring carefully in Vanessa's open palm, closing the other woman's fingers around it. He's yours, Clara said quietly, just loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. Congratulations. I hope you got a good deal on the consulting fee. Vanessa's face went white. The ring fell from her hand and bounced across the marble floor with a delicate tinkling sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Nathaniel shot to his feet, his chair scraping backward. Clara, stop. Stop what? Embarrassing you? She turned to face him fully, and for the first time in 7 years, she didn't care that he was taller, richer, more powerful. You brought your mistress to my birthday party, Nathaniel. You sat her in my seat. You introduced her to a room full of people who are supposed to be celebrating me. And you thought I'd just, what, smile and play along? His hand shot out and gripped her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to convey control. His voice dropped low, meant only for her. You're making a scene. Good. Clara pulled free, stepped back. Cameras were definitely recording now. Phones held high. Guests leaning in, hungry for drama. Let them watch. She turned and walked toward the terrace doors, her heels clicking steadily across marble. Behind her, she heard Nathaniel saying something about stress, about emotional instability, about how concerned he'd been about her mental health lately, already controlling the narrative, already protecting his empire. Clara pushed through the glass doors and stepped into freezing October air. The terrace overlooked Michigan Avenue, lights stretching north toward the lake like fallen stars. The wind cut through her thin dress immediately, raising goosebumps across her arms and shoulders. She wrapped her arms around herself and walked to the stone railing, breathing hard, adrenaline finally catching up. What had she just done? Her phone buzzed, texts flooding in. Unknown numbers, probably reporters who'd already gotten the footage. Friends, or people who'd called themselves friends, asking if she was okay. their concern wrapped in barely concealed excitement. She silenced it and shoved the phone in her clutch. That was either the bravest or most reckless thing I've seen in years. Clara spun around. A man stood near the terrace doors, smoke from a cigarette curling upward in the cold air. She hadn't noticed him when she came outside, but he must have been there the whole time, standing in the shadows beyond the light spilling from the ballroom. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark suit that fit too well to be rented. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that reflected city lights. He looked familiar in that vague way wealthy men in Chicago often did, like she'd probably seen his photo in the business section next to some article about mergers or acquisitions. "Were you watching?" Clara asked. Everyone was watching. He took a drag from the cigarette, studying her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "Though I suspect you knew that. I didn't plan it. Best performances are always improvised." He moved closer, and Clara caught expensive cologne mixed with cigarette smoke. "Julian Mercer. I'm one of Nathaniel's business partners." Recognition clicked into place. Julian Mercer. The venture capitalist who'd helped fund Nathaniel's last 3 major developments. Widowed young, if she remembered correctly. Single father. Notoriously private despite being worth several $billion. "So you're on his side," Clara said flatly. "I'm on the side of interesting people doing interesting things." Julian offered the cigarette. "You smoke?" "I quit." Good time to start again. Despite herself, Clara took it. The tobacco was harsh and foreign, nothing like the cheap menthols she used to buy in high school. She coughed, handed it back. "You're going to catch hell for that," Julian said, nodding toward the ballroom. Walking out, making him look weak in front of his investors. He made himself look weak by bringing his mistress to my birthday party. True. Julian stubbed out the cigarette on the stone railing. Though in Nathaniel's defense, and I say this knowing there is no actual defense, he probably didn't think you'd notice. Clara laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "He thought I'd be grateful just to be here. The poor girl who got lucky, who should shut up and appreciate the life he gave me." "Is that how he treated you?" The question was too direct, too knowing. Clara looked away, focusing on the river of cars moving below. "Why do you care?" "Honest answer?" Julian leaned against the railing beside her, careful to maintain distance. "Because I've watched Nathaniel operate for 5 years, and I've never seen him lose control. Not once. But you just cracked his composure in under 3 minutes. That's either extremely stupid or extremely strategic. What if it's neither? What if I just hit my limit? Then you're braver than most people." He paused. "The door's about to open. Nathaniel's coming out here to either apologize or threaten you, possibly both. If you want to leave before that happens, there's a service elevator around the corner. Takes you straight to the parking garage." Clara glanced at the terrace doors. Through the glass, she could see Nathaniel pushing through the crowd, his face tight with controlled fury. "Why are you helping me?" Julian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because anyone who can make Nathaniel cross panic is someone I want on my side, and because—" He stopped, reconsidered. "Because nobody should have to face that conversation in a cocktail dress in October. Go. Now." Clara didn't waste time questioning it. She headed for the corner of the terrace where shadows pooled thickest, found the service door exactly where Julian said it would be. Behind her, she heard the main doors bang open, heard Nathaniel's voice sharp and demanding. "Where is she?" Julian's response was perfectly calm. "She left. Took a car home. You should probably give her space tonight, Nathaniel. Let things cool down. This is none of your business." Clara slipped through the service door and let it close behind her, cutting off the argument. The service elevator was small, industrial, nothing like the grand lifts that guests used. It smelled like cleaning chemicals and old metal. Clara's reflection in the polished doors showed a woman who looked simultaneously victorious and terrified. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The elevator descended, and Clara watched the numbers drop. 15, 14, 13. By tomorrow morning, her face would be everywhere. The humiliated wife. The social climber who'd finally been put in her place. Nathaniel would control the story. He always controlled the story. He had publicists, lawyers, connections in every media outlet that mattered. What did she have? A high school diploma, a resume full of service jobs, a checking account with maybe $3,000, money she'd saved secretly over the past 6 months when she realized leaving might become necessary. The elevator reached the parking garage. The doors opened to reveal concrete and shadows and the echo of her footsteps. Clara's car was on level 3, a Honda Civic she'd bought herself before the marriage, the one thing Nathaniel had never tried to replace with something more expensive, more appropriate for his wife. She'd kept it maintained, kept the title in her name, kept the keys on a separate ring from the house keys. Some part of her had always known she might need to run. The car started on the first try. Clara sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, and finally let herself shake. What now? She couldn't go back to the penthouse. Nathaniel would be there within the hour, and she'd learned over 7 years that arguments went very differently behind closed doors than they did in public. He'd never hit her. Nathaniel was too smart for visible bruises. But there were other ways to hurt someone. Ways that didn't leave marks that cameras could capture. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through contacts looking for someone she could call, somewhere she could go. The list was shorter than it should have been. 7 years married to Nathaniel had quietly, systematically separated her from everyone who'd mattered before. Old friends from high school had drifted away or been subtly frozen out. Her mother had died 4 years ago, cancer that ate through her faster than the treatments could fight it. Clara's co-workers at the diner were kind, but not close. Not the kind of people you called at 10 p.m. on a Friday night asking for a place to crash. She'd become isolated without realizing it was happening. Clara's finger hovered over her mother's contact entry, still saved in her phone even though the number didn't connect anymore. She'd kept it there like a talisman, a reminder that someone had loved her unconditionally once, even if that someone was gone now. A knock on her car window made her jump. Julian Mercer stood outside in the parking garage, somehow having made it down here despite staying on the terrace when she left. He made a rolling gesture, lower the window. Clara hesitated, then pressed the button. Cold air rushed in. "You followed me," she said. "I took the guest elevator. Faster." Julian crouched down to eye level, forearms resting on the door. "You have somewhere to go tonight. That's really none of your business." "You're right. It's not." He pulled a business card from his pocket, held it out. "But if you don't have somewhere safe, call that number. I have a guest suite in my building. Separate entrance, private security, no questions asked." Clara stared at the card. Heavy stock, minimalist design, just a name and a phone number. "Why would you offer that?" "Because Nathaniel's going to tear this city apart looking for you tonight, and he has cameras on half the hotels downtown. Because you just publicly humiliated a very powerful man who doesn't forgive easily. And because—" Julian stopped, reconsidered his words. "Because I have an 8-year-old daughter who asks questions I don't know how to answer. And one of those questions is why people don't help each other when they should. I'd like to have a good answer next time she asks." It was such a strange, specific reason that Clara almost believed it. "I don't know you," she said. "You don't know anyone who isn't in Nathaniel's pocket at this point. At least I'm being honest about my motives." "Which are?" "To cause problems for a business partner who's been cutting corners and hiding evidence of financial irregularities that could blow back on everyone he's worked with." Julian stood up, stepped back from the car. "Call or don't call, but that offer stands for the next 6 hours. After that, Nathaniel will have eyes on my building too." He walked away before Clara could respond, his footsteps echoing through the concrete garage. Clara sat in her car, card in hand, and thought about choices. The smart thing would be to go to a hotel outside the city. Use cash, use a fake name, disappear for a few days while she figured out her next move. Stay off the grid. But Julian was right about the cameras. Nathaniel had connections everywhere, and if the past 7 years had taught Clara anything, it was that running without a plan just meant getting caught slower. She looked at the card again. Then she started her car and drove north toward the address printed in small letters on the back. Butbums. The building was in Lincoln Park, one of those converted warehouse structures that had been renovated into expensive lofts. Secure parking, door attendant, the kind of place where residents paid monthly fees that exceeded most people's rent. Clara pulled up to the gate, rolled down her window. The security guard looked at her skeptically. She was still in her cocktail dress, her makeup probably smudged, driving a car that didn't match the neighborhood. "I'm here to see Julian Mercer," she said. "He's expecting me." The guard checked his tablet, frowned. "Your name?" "Clara Bennett." A pause. Then the guard's expression shifted slightly. Recognition, maybe from whatever footage of the birthday party disaster had already hit social media. Go ahead, Mrs. Cross. Mr. Mercer left instructions. Park in spot 27B, take the north elevator to the penthouse level. The gate lifted. Clara drove through, following signs to the underground parking structure. The Honda looked ridiculous parked between a Tesla and a Mercedes. Clara grabbed her clutch, her only possession at this point besides the car and the clothes on her back, and headed for the elevator. The ride to the penthouse level took 47 seconds. Clara counted, using the time to steady her breathing, to prepare herself for whatever came next. The elevator opened directly into a private foyer. Slate floors, minimalist furniture, a single painting on the wall that was probably worth more than Clara's car. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, lights spreading out like circuit boards. Julian stood waiting, now wearing jeans and a sweater instead of the suit. He looked younger, more approachable, less like a billionaire and more like someone's tired older brother. "You came," he said. "I didn't have anywhere else to go. Honest. I appreciate that." He gestured toward a hallway. "Guest suites this way. Private bathroom, separate entrance if you need it. My daughter's asleep, school night, but you'll probably meet her at breakfast if you're still here." Clara followed him down the hallway, her heels clicking on hardwood floors. Everything about this place was expensive in that understated way that only extremely wealthy people achieved, the kind of luxury that whispered instead of shouted. "Why are you really doing this?" Clara asked. Julian stopped at a door, hand on the handle. "You want the polite answer or the real one?" "Real." Nathaniel's been hiding financial irregularities in his development projects. Forged contracts, inflated property values, offshore accounts that don't show up on official documentation. I've suspected for months but couldn't prove it. He looked at her directly. "You've been signing documents for 7 years, Clara. Co-signing loans, authorizing transfers. Your name's on half his paperwork." Cold understanding spread through Clara's chest. "He made me a liability. He made you a potential scapegoat. If federal investigators come looking, and they will eventually, your signature's all over crimes you probably didn't know you were committing." Clara's legs felt weak. She leaned against the wall, pressing her palm against cool plaster. "I signed everything he put in front of me. I trusted him." "Which makes you either an accomplice or a victim, depending on what you can prove." Julian opened the door to the guest suite. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll talk about what happens next. But tonight, you're safe here. That's all that matters." The suite was beautiful. King bed with white linens, sitting area with a view of the park. Bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Everything pristine and untouched, like a hotel room that had never been used. Clara turned to thank Julian, but he was already walking away, giving her privacy. She closed the door and locked it, an automatic response from 7 years of protecting whatever small spaces Nathaniel allowed her to keep. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry. Not because her marriage was over, not because she'd caused a scene, but because somewhere in the past 7 years, she'd signed her name to crimes she didn't understand, trusting a man who'd planned to throw her away the moment she became inconvenient. And because tomorrow, she'd have to figure out how to save herself from a trap she'd walked into without realizing there were walls closing in around her. Outside the window, Chicago glittered like broken promises. Clara pulled out her phone, scrolled through the messages still flooding in. Most were from numbers she didn't recognize, reporters probably, or curious strangers who'd seen the videos. But one message stood out. Sent 20 minutes ago from Nathaniel. "Come home. We'll fix this. I'll make it right. I promise." Clara stared at the words. 7 years ago, she would have believed them, would have run back, grateful for forgiveness, willing to pretend nothing had happened. But tonight, in a borrowed room in a stranger's penthouse, Clara deleted the message without responding. And for the first time in 7 years, she went to sleep without wondering if she'd done something wrong. Clara woke to sunlight cutting through unfamiliar windows and the sound of a child laughing somewhere in the apartment. For 3 disoriented seconds, she didn't remember where she was. Then it came back in fragments. The ballroom, Nathaniel's face, the wedding ring bouncing across marble, Julian's business card in the parking garage. Her phone showed 7:47 a.m. 32 missed calls from Nathaniel. 14 voicemails she had no intention of listening to. Text messages that started apologetic around midnight and turned threatening by 4 a.m. Clara sat up, still wearing yesterday's cocktail dress. Her makeup was smeared across the white pillowcase. She'd have to apologize for that. Her feet ached from the heels she'd finally kicked off sometime around 2 a.m. when she'd stopped crying and started planning. Planning what exactly she wasn't sure yet. A knock on the door made her jump. "Miss Bennett?" A woman's voice, professional and careful. "Mr. Mercer asked me to bring you some clothes. May I leave them outside the door?" Clara crossed the room, opened it a crack. A woman in her 50s stood there holding shopping bags from stores Clara recognized but had never actually shopped in. The kind of places where a single shirt cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "I'm Marie," the woman said. "I manage the household. Mr. Mercer estimated your size, but if anything doesn't fit, I can exchange it." You didn't have to." "He also asked me to tell you that breakfast is in 20 minutes, but there's no pressure. You can eat in your room if you'd prefer." Marie set the bags down carefully. "The coffee's fresh, though, and his daughter makes excellent pancakes for an 8-year-old, if you can tolerate some creative topping combinations." Before Clara could respond, Marie nodded politely and disappeared down the hallway. Clara pulled the bags inside and looked through them. Jeans that actually looked comfortable instead of designer. A soft sweater. Undergarments still in packaging. Toiletries. Everything practical, nothing extravagant. Someone had put thought into this instead of just throwing money at the problem. She showered in the enormous bathroom, scrubbing off yesterday's makeup and expensive hair products until she looked like herself again. The clothes fit perfectly, which was somehow more unsettling than if they'd been wrong. It meant Julian had actually looked at her last night, had noticed details while she was falling apart. Clara braided her wet hair, stared at her reflection. Without the costume of wealth she'd worn for 7 years, she looked younger. More like the girl who'd served coffee on the South Side, who'd believed that marrying rich meant escaping instead of just trading one prison for another. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Nathaniel. "I know where you are. We need to talk." Clara's stomach dropped. She stepped out of the bathroom, found her clutch, pulled out Julian's business card. The number on it wasn't the same as the one Nathaniel was texting from, which meant she heard voices from the main living area. One was Julian's, calm and measured. The other was Nathaniel's, sharp with barely controlled fury. Clara moved quietly down the hallway, staying just out of sight. "Completely inappropriate," Nathaniel was saying. "She's my wife. Whatever issues we're having, they're private. You had no right to interfere." "She's an adult who made a choice," Julian replied. His voice carried no heat, just flat observation. "I offered her a safe place to stay. She accepted. That's the extent of my involvement." "Bullshit! You've been waiting for an opportunity to undermine me. This is about the Lakeshore Project, isn't it? You want leverage? I want breakfast with my daughter without you screaming in my living room. Claire's in the guest suite. If she wants to talk to you, she'll come out. If she doesn't, you need to leave." Clara heard something slam. Nathaniel's hand against a table, probably. "You think you're protecting her? You have no idea what you've gotten involved in. Clara's not some innocent victim. She's been part of this from the beginning." Part of what exactly? The silence that followed was heavy enough that Clara felt it from the hallway. When Nathaniel spoke again, his voice had shifted into something colder, more calculating. "She signed documents. Important documents. If she starts talking to lawyers or investigators, she's going to incriminate herself in things she doesn't understand. I'm trying to protect her from that." "How generous." "I'm serious, Julian. Whatever issues we have personally, professionally, whatever, Clara needs to come home before this gets complicated in ways that hurt her more than me." Clara stepped into the doorway. Both men turned. Nathaniel looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept. For a moment, Clara felt something that might have been concern. 7 years of conditioning didn't disappear overnight. Then she remembered Vanessa's hand on his arm, the way he'd looked through Clara like she was furniture, and the feeling died. "I'm not coming home," Clara said. Nathaniel's expression cycled through relief, anger, and finally landed on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Clara, sweetheart, let's talk privately, please." "We can talk here." "This isn't appropriate. You brought your mistress to my birthday party. We're way past appropriate." Nathaniel glanced at Julian, clearly uncomfortable having this conversation with an audience. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Vanessa doesn't mean anything. She never did. I was stressed about work. I made bad choices, and I hurt you. I know that. But we can fix this. Clara had heard variations of this speech before, after smaller infractions. The formula was always the same: acknowledge the harm, minimize the cause, promise change, never actually change. What documents did I sign? Claire asked. Nathaniel blinked. What? You said I signed important documents. What were they? We can discuss that later. Julian said my name's on contracts for your development projects. Loans, transfers, is that true? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He shot a look at Julian that could have drawn blood. Julian has no business discussing our private financial arrangements. So it is true. You're my wife. It's normal for spouses to co-sign. What did I sign, Nathaniel? Specifically. For 7 years, Clara had accepted his vague answers, his dismissals, his insistence that she didn't need to understand the boring details. But standing in Julian's living room wearing borrowed clothes with nowhere left to fall, she discovered she was done accepting. Nathaniel's expression hardened. You want to do this now? Fine. Yes, you signed loan documents, property transfers, operating agreements for the LLCs that hold the development projects, standard business practices. Were they legitimate? Of course they were. Because Julian seems to think federal investigators might be interested in them. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Nathaniel turned slowly to face Julian. You told her that? I told her she should be aware of potential legal exposure, Julian said calmly, since her signature's attached to your business dealings. You son of a... Nathaniel caught himself, breathing hard. You're trying to turn her against me. You want her scared and confused so she'll cooperate with whatever play you're making. The only person who should scare Clara is you, Julian interrupted, given that you've apparently been using her signature without ensuring she understood what she was authorizing. Clara felt sick. Did I sign anything illegal? No, Nathaniel said immediately. Absolutely not. Julian's paranoid because he doesn't understand the full scope of... Your Lakeshore project is built on inflated property assessments, Julian said, still in that terrifyingly calm voice. You're telling investors the land is worth $40 million when you acquired it for $8 million. That's fraud, Nathaniel. And Clara's signature is on the acquisition documents. The room went silent except for the sound of someone small running down a hallway, followed by Marie's voice calling out, Walk, please, Sophia. We don't run inside. A girl appeared in the doorway, 8 years old, dark hair in a messy ponytail, wearing pajamas with cartoon astronauts on them. She looked between the 3 adults, her expression going from excited to uncertain. Daddy? Are you still making pancakes? Julian's entire demeanor shifted. The cold businessman disappeared, replaced by someone softer, more present. Yeah, sweetheart, just talking to some friends first. Is that the lady from last night? Sophia looked at Clara with open curiosity. The one you said needed a safe place? Clara felt her throat tighten. Julian had told his daughter about her, had explained it in terms an 8-year-old could understand, someone needing safety. That's Clara, Julian said. Clara, this is my daughter Sophia. Hi, Clara managed. Sophia tilted her head, studying Clara with the unsettling directness children sometimes had. Did somebody hurt you? The question landed like a punch. Clara opened her mouth, closed it, had no idea how to answer honestly without traumatizing a child. It's complicated, Clara said finally. That's what Daddy says when the answer is yes, but he doesn't want me to worry. Sophia looked at Nathaniel, who was staring at her like she was a bomb that might explode. Are you the somebody? Nathaniel's face flushed. I think I should go. Good idea, Julian said. This isn't over, Nathaniel told Clara. We need to talk, really talk, without him poisoning your perspective. You can call, Clara said quietly, but I'm not coming home. That guest suite isn't your home, Clara. You don't belong here. I didn't belong at the birthday party either, apparently. Nathaniel flinched. For just a second, Clara saw actual pain cross his face. Not the calculated performance of remorse, but something genuine. Then it disappeared behind the mask he wore so well. I'll call later, he said, when you've had time to think clearly. He left without another word, the door closing behind him with an expensive soft click. Sophia watched him go, then looked up at her father. I don't like him. Sophia, he has mean eyes. Julian sighed. Go wash your hands. Pancakes in 5 minutes. The girl ran off, her footsteps thundering despite Marie's earlier correction. Julian rubbed his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "I'm sorry," Clara said. "I didn't mean to bring this into your home." "You didn't bring it. I invited it." Julian walked toward the kitchen, gesturing for Clara to follow. And Sophia's right, unfortunately. Nathaniel does have mean eyes. She's got good instincts. The kitchen was massive, but somehow still felt warm, copper pots hanging from hooks, herbs growing in small pots on the windowsill, a refrigerator covered in crayon drawings and spelling tests, evidence of actual life being lived, not just wealth being displayed. Julian pulled ingredients from the refrigerator while Clara sat at the counter, feeling useless and displaced. "How long were you married?" Clara asked. "To Sophia's mother?" Julian cracked eggs into a bowl. 6 years. She died when Sophia was 4. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. "I'm sorry." "Me too." He whisked the eggs harder than necessary. "Sophia doesn't remember her very well. Sometimes I don't know if that's better or worse." Clara watched him cook, the practiced movements of someone who'd done this many times. "You really do this every morning? Make breakfast?" "Unless I'm traveling. Marie could do it, but..." He shrugged. "I missed a lot when I was building the business. Worked 80-hour weeks, came home after Sophia was asleep, left before she woke up. After her mother died, I realized I'd been absent even when I was present. So now we have breakfast, every morning that I'm home." It was such a stark contrast to Nathaniel, who'd never cooked a meal in the 7 years Clara had known him, who'd hired people for every domestic task and seemed to view parenting as something you outsourced to nannies and private schools. Sophia returned, climbing onto the stool next to Clara. "Did you really take off your ring and give it to the mean-eyes man's girlfriend?" Clara blinked. "How did you—" "Emily from school's mom was at the party. She posted a video." Sophia pulled out a tablet that had been sitting on the counter. "It's everywhere. You're famous." She turned the screen toward Clara. The video was professionally shot, someone with an expensive phone and a steady hand. It showed Clara removing the ring, placing it in Vanessa's palm, walking away. The audio had caught her words. "He's yours." The video had 3 million views. 3 million. Clara felt the room tilt. "Sophia," Julian said sharply, "put that away." "But everyone's talking about it. People are saying she's brave. They're calling Mean Eyes Man a bunch of words I'm not allowed to repeat." Sophia looked at Clara with something like admiration. "You made him look stupid in front of everybody." "That wasn't—" Stopped. "I didn't plan it." "The best revenge never is," Julian said, sliding a plate of pancakes in front of his daughter. "Eat." Sophia doused her pancakes in syrup, added strawberries and chocolate chips in a combination that made Clara's teeth hurt just looking at it. "Are you going to stay here?" "I don't know," Clara said honestly. "You should. We have extra rooms and Daddy gets lonely when it's just us." "Sophia." "What?" "You do. You get that sad face when you think I'm not looking." She turned back to Clara. "Plus, you seem nice. Nicer than the last lady Daddy invited to dinner." Julian looked pained. "There was one dinner. One. And it was a business associate. She kept touching your arm and laughing too loud. It was weird." Clara found herself smiling despite everything. There was something refreshing about Sophia's complete lack of filter, her directness. In Nathaniel's world, everyone performed. Everyone calculated their words. This child just said exactly what she thought. Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "I need to take this. It's my lawyer." "Clara, help yourself to food. Sophia, finish eating and then get dressed for school." He disappeared into what looked like a home office, closing the door. Sophia leaned toward Clara conspiratorially. "His lawyer's been calling a lot, ever since he started investigating Mean Eyes Man. You know about that?" "I know everything. Adults think kids don't listen, but we do, especially when they're talking about interesting stuff." Sophia took a huge bite of pancake. "Daddy thinks your husband's been stealing money. Lots of it." Clara's stomach twisted. "Did your dad tell you that?" "No. I heard him on the phone last week. He was talking to someone about fake property values and offshore accounts and something called money laundering, which I thought meant actual laundry, but apparently it's about hiding where money comes from." She chewed thoughtfully. "Is your husband going to jail?" I don't know. Do you want him to? The question was so direct, so uncomplicated, that Clara didn't have a prepared answer. She'd spent the past 12 hours thinking about escape, about survival, about protecting herself. She hadn't let herself think about what she actually wanted to happen to Nathaniel. I want the truth, Clara said finally. Whatever that is. Sophia nodded like this made perfect sense. Daddy says the truth is usually more complicated than people want it to be, but it's still better than lies. They ate in silence for a moment. Clara picked at a pancake she'd served herself more out of politeness than hunger. Through the office door, she could hear Julian's muffled voice, sharp with tension. Can I ask you something? Sophia said. Sure. Why did you marry someone with mean eyes? Clara laughed, a surprised, slightly broken sound. He didn't have mean eyes when I met him, or maybe he did and I just didn't see them. What did you see? Clara thought back to 7 years ago. She'd been 23, working double shifts at a diner in the Loop, living in a studio apartment with a roommate who dealt weed out of their kitchen. Nathaniel had come in one Tuesday morning, ordered coffee, left a $100 tip on a $6 check. She'd chased him into the parking lot thinking it was a mistake. He'd smiled and said it wasn't. They dated for 4 months before he proposed. Fancy restaurants, weekends in New York, a life that felt like stepping into someone else's dream. He'd been charming, attentive, generous. He'd made her feel chosen. Looking back, Clara could see the red flags she'd missed. The way he'd slowly discouraged her from seeing friends. How he'd suggested she quit her job, that it wasn't appropriate for his wife to work service industry. The subtle ways he'd positioned himself as the authority on everything from what she wore to what she believed. But at 23, fresh from losing her father and watching her mother work herself to exhaustion, Clara had mistaken control for care. I saw someone who made me feel safe, Clara told Sophia. But safety and control aren't the same thing. I just didn't know that yet. Sophia processed this seriously. Daddy says the same thing about Mommy, that he thought giving her everything she wanted was the same as loving her right. But she was sad anyway. Clara looked at this 8-year-old child who somehow understood adult concepts with painful clarity. Your dad told you that? Not in those words. But I figured it out. Sophia finished her pancakes, pushed the plate away. Adults think they're complicated, but you're really not. You just take longer to admit what you already know. Julian emerged from the office before Clara could respond. His expression was grim. Sophia, go get ready for school. Marie's taking you today. But you always, not today. Go. Something in his tone made Sophia obey immediately. She slid off the stool and disappeared down the hallway without argument. Julian waited until her door closed before he spoke. That was my attorney. Nathaniel filed paperwork this morning requesting a court order to freeze your access to joint accounts and credit cards. Clara felt the floor drop out. He can't do that. He's claiming you're mentally unstable, that last night's behavior demonstrated a breakdown. He's got affidavits from guests at the party describing you as erratic and unpredictable. Julian's voice was carefully neutral, delivering bad news without inflection. He's also filing for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and abandonment. Abandonment? I've been gone 12 hours. He's moving fast to control the narrative. By the time you can contest any of this, he'll have frozen you out of everything. Julian sat down across from her. How much money do you have in accounts that are just yours? Clara thought about her secret checking account, $3,000. Maybe $300 in cash in her purse. Not much, she admitted. Then you need a lawyer, today. Someone who specializes in high-asset divorces. Julian pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. I know someone. She's aggressive, expensive, and she doesn't lose. But Clara, you need to understand something. What? This is going to get ugly. Nathaniel's going to dig up everything he can use against you. He'll paint you as unstable, as a gold digger, as someone who married him for money and is now trying to take him for everything in a divorce. He has resources. He has connections. He's going to make this hurt. Clara felt herself shaking. I don't want his money. I just want out. That's not how this works. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but assets get divided. And if you sign documents authorizing illegal activity, even unknowingly, Nathaniel's lawyers will use that to argue you're not entitled to anything. Worse, they might argue you should be held liable. Liable for what? Whatever crimes he committed using your signature. The walls felt like they were closing in. Clara stood up, needing to move, to pace, to do something other than sit still while her life collapsed. "I didn't know," she said. "I signed what he told me to sign. I trusted him. I believe you, but proving that in court is different than knowing it's true." Julian stood too, maintaining distance but radiating something that felt almost protective. "I'm going to help you. My attorney will coordinate with the divorce lawyer. We'll start building your defense." "Why?" The question came out sharper than Clara intended. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me. This is going to cost you, financially, probably professionally. Nathaniel will come after you for interfering." Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My wife wasn't happy. For years she wasn't happy, and I didn't notice because I was too busy building an empire. I gave her everything except what she actually needed, which was a husband who was present, who listened, who saw her as a person instead of a responsibility to be managed." He looked out the window toward the city stretching below. "She died unhappy, and I have to live with that. With knowing I had time to fix it, and I didn't because I was too focused on the wrong things." He turned back to Clara. "I can't fix what happened to my wife, but I can stop watching another woman get destroyed by a man who thinks marriage is ownership, so that's why." Clara felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd spent 7 years with someone who'd never once spoken with this kind of raw honesty. "I can't pay you back," she said quietly. "I'm not keeping a tab. I don't know how long it'll take to get back on my feet. Then you'll stay in the guest suite until you do. Clara, I'm not your husband. I'm not going to punish you for needing help." The kindness was almost harder to take than Nathaniel's cruelty. At least cruelty made sense. Kindness from a near stranger felt like a trap Clara couldn't identify yet, but she was out of options. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Thank you." Julian's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "It's a news alert. Someone leaked the story to the Tribune. Billionaire's wife walks out during birthday scandal. They've got quotes from anonymous sources at the party." He showed Clara the screen. The article was already trending. There was a photo of her and Nathaniel from some charity gala last year. Her smiling, him with his arm around her shoulders, both of them looking like the perfect wealthy couple. The comment section was brutal. Half the people were calling Clara a hero. The other half were calling her unstable, attention-seeking, a woman who couldn't handle her husband's success. "Don't read the comments," Julian said, pulling the phone back. "Nothing good ever comes from reading the comments." But it was too late. Clara had seen enough to know that Nathaniel was already winning the public narrative war. He had statements from guests. He had his team working damage control. He had everything except the truth. "I need to tell my side," Clara said. "Not yet. Anything you say publicly can be used against you in court. Let the lawyers strategize first. So I'm just supposed to sit here while he destroys my reputation? Your reputation isn't what's at stake. Your freedom is." Julian met her eyes. "If Nathaniel can prove you knowingly participated in financial fraud, you could face criminal charges, prison time. That matters more than what strangers on the internet think about your marriage." The word prison hit Clara like cold water. She'd been thinking about this as a divorce, a scandal, a humiliating public breakup. She hadn't let herself think about actual criminal consequences. "I need air," she said. Julian gestured toward the terrace. "Out there. Take your time." Clara stepped outside into cold November morning. The city spread below like a circuit board, millions of people going about their lives, unaware that hers was imploding in real time. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You have no idea what you've started. Last chance to come home and fix this quietly." Clara deleted it without responding. Another text, different number. "We should talk. Off the record. I'm a reporter with the Tribune, and I'd love to hear your perspective on what happened." Delete. Another. "Your mother would be so disappointed in how you're handling this." That one made Clara's hands shake. Someone was weaponizing her dead mother's memory. Someone close enough to Nathaniel to know that would land. She turned off her phone completely and shoved it in her pocket. Behind her, she heard the terrace door open. Julian stepped out, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her one. They stood in silence, drinking coffee, watching the city wake up below them. "Sophia likes you," Julian said eventually. "She's direct. That's a polite way of saying she has no filter." He smiled slightly. Her therapist says it's healthy, that she's processing her mother's death by refusing to hide how she feels about anything. How long has she been in therapy? Since the accident. 4 years now. Julian took a long drink of coffee. She still has nightmares sometimes. Wakes up crying, asking why her mom didn't come home. And I never have a good answer because there isn't one. Sometimes terrible things just happen. Clara thought about her own mother, dying slowly in a hospital bed while medical bills piled up faster than insurance could cover them. My mom used to say the same thing, that life doesn't owe us fairness. Did you believe her? I wanted to believe we could earn fairness, that if I worked hard enough, made the right choices, I could build a life that made sense. Clara laughed bitterly. Turns out I just traded one kind of struggle for another. At least this struggle is yours. You're choosing it. Clara turned to look at him. You think leaving was a choice? I had nowhere else to go. You could have gone back. Most people do. It's easier than starting over. Julian met her eyes. But you're still here. That's a choice. Maybe he was right. Maybe she'd been making choices all along without recognizing them as such. The terrace door opened again. Marie appeared, looking apologetic. Mr. Mercer, the car service is here for Sophia, and your 10 o'clock conference call starts in 15 minutes. Julian nodded, drained his coffee. Clara, the divorce attorney's name is Rebecca Huang. I'll text you her contact information. Call her today. Tell her I sent you. She'll know what to do. He disappeared inside, leaving Clara alone with the city and the wreckage of her life. She pulled out her phone, turned it back on, despite knowing it would immediately flood with messages. But there was one call she needed to make first. The diner where she used to work, answered on the third ring. Maggie's, a familiar voice said. Hey, Lisa, it's Clara. A pause. Oh, honey, we saw the videos. Are you okay? Not really. Listen, I don't know if I still have a job. You do if you want it. Maggie's been fielding calls from reporters all morning asking about you. She told them all to go to hell. Lisa lowered her voice. Between you and me, she always hated that your husband never let you work full time. She'll give you all the shifts you can handle. Clara felt something crack open in her chest. Relief, maybe? Or just gratitude that someone still saw her as a person instead of a scandal. Tell her thank you. Tell her I'll call later this week once I figure out what's happening. You take care of yourself, Clara. And for what it's worth, that ring drop thing was badass. Clara ended the call feeling marginally less alone. She spent the rest of the morning in the guest suite, avoiding the news, avoiding social media, avoiding everything except the immediate practical problems in front of her. She called Rebecca Huang, the divorce attorney Julian recommended. The woman's assistant scheduled an emergency consultation for that afternoon. At 2 p.m., Clara sat in a conference room in the Loop, while Rebecca Huang, 50-something, sharply dressed, with eyes that missed nothing, reviewed paperwork Clara had never actually read when she signed it. This is bad, Rebecca said finally, setting down the documents. Not unfixable, but bad. How bad? Your husband used your signature to authorize loans against properties that don't exist. He inflated asset values on federal documents. He moved money through shell corporations to avoid taxes and hide funds from investors. Rebecca tapped one document with a manicured nail. This one alone could get you charged with wire fraud if a prosecutor decides you knew what you were signing. Clara felt sick. I didn't know. He told me it was standard paperwork. Did you read any of it before signing? No. He said I didn't need to, that it was technical business stuff. That's going to be your defense. Spousal coercion, lack of financial sophistication. The argument that you were essentially a victim of his manipulation. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. But Clara, you need to understand something. This defense works better when the wife has no education, no work history, no evidence of independent thinking. You worked. You had your own bank account. You're 30 years old, not some teenage bride. A prosecutor could argue you should have known better. So I'm screwed. You're at risk. There's a difference. Rebecca pulled out a legal pad, started making notes. We need to establish a pattern of controlling behavior. Document every time he discouraged you from working, from seeing friends, from making independent decisions. Every time he insisted you sign something without reading it. Every time he made you feel stupid for asking questions. Clara thought about 7 years of small moments that had seemed harmless individually, but added up to something darker. That's going to take a while. Then we start now. Rebecca clicked her pen. Tell me everything. From the beginning. Clara talked for 3 hours. About the whirlwind courtship, the gradual isolation, the way Nathaniel had slowly taken control of every aspect of her life while making it seem like generosity. About the parties where he'd introduce her as my wife who used to work at a diner like it was charming instead of condescending. About the credit cards he'd later cancel without telling her, the friends whose calls he'd intercept, the job offers he'd convince her to turn down. By the time she finished, Rebecca had filled 8 pages with notes. This is good, the attorney said. This establishes pattern. Now we need witnesses. People who saw him treat you this way. Everyone in his circle is loyal to him. What about staff? People who worked in your house? Clara thought about the rotating cast of housekeepers, personal assistants, drivers. Most lasted a few months before Nathaniel found some reason to fire them. They all signed NDAs. NDAs don't protect against criminal investigations. If federal prosecutors get involved, those NDAs won't matter. Rebecca checked her watch. I need to file an emergency motion to unfreeze your accounts. It won't work. Judges don't usually intervene in asset freezes this early, but it establishes that you're fighting back. Shows you're not just accepting his narrative. How much is this going to cost? Clara asked quietly. Rebecca named a retainer fee that made Clara's stomach drop. It was more than she'd make in 6 months at the diner. Julian Mercer's office already sent payment, Rebecca said, reading Clara's expression. He's covering your legal fees. I can't let him do that. He already did. And honestly, you need someone with resources on your side. Nathaniel's going to spend whatever it takes to bury you. Fighting him broke would be suicide. Clara wanted to argue, to maintain some shred of independence, but Rebecca was right. Pride didn't win court cases. Okay, Clara said. What happens next? Next, we wait for Nathaniel's next move. He'll file for divorce formally, probably by end of business today. He'll push for a fast settlement, try to pressure you into signing away your rights before you understand what you're giving up. Rebecca gathered her papers. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't meet with him alone. Every communication goes through me. Clara left the law office feeling simultaneously protected and terrified. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and red. People rushed past on their way home from work, normal people with normal problems. Clara's phone buzzed, a voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. She listened to it standing on the corner of Clark and Madison, traffic roaring around her. Mrs. Cross, this is Agent Matthews with the FBI. We'd like to speak with you regarding financial irregularities in your husband's business dealings. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. This is not optional. The message ended. Clara stood frozen on the sidewalk while the world moved around her, holding a phone that contained a message that could destroy what was left of her life. The FBI was involved, which meant this wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was an investigation, and Clara was right in the center of it. Clara played the voicemail 3 more times, standing on that corner, each repetition making the words feel less real and more terrifying. FBI, financial irregularities, not optional. Her hands shook as she called Rebecca Huang's office. I need you to call them back, Clara said when the attorney answered. I need you to find out what they want. Slow down. Who needs me to call? The FBI. Agent Matthews. He left a message saying they want to talk to me about Nathaniel's business dealings. Clara's voice cracked. Rebecca, I can't go to prison. I didn't know what I was signing. Stop. Don't say anything else over the phone. Rebecca's tone shifted from professional to urgent. Where are you right now? Clark and Madison. Get back to Julian's building. Don't talk to anyone. Don't answer any calls from numbers you don't recognize. I'll contact the agent and set up a meeting with you present. Do you understand? Yes. Clara, this is important. Do not panic. Talking to federal investigators isn't an admission of guilt. It's actually a good sign that they're reaching out to you separately from Nathaniel. It means they see you as a potential witness, not necessarily a target. What's the difference? Prison, Rebecca said bluntly. Witnesses testify. Targets get indicted. We want you firmly in the first category. Now go. I'll call you in an hour. The line went dead. Clara walked back to Julian's building in a daze, barely registering the cold wind or the evening rush of pedestrians. Her mind kept circling the same thought. How had her life gone from boring and suffocating to completely destroyed in less than 48 hours? The doorman recognized her this time, nodded her through without question. The elevator ride felt longer than before. When the doors opened to Julian's penthouse, she found him in the kitchen with Sophia, helping with homework at the counter. "How'd it go with Rebecca?" Julian asked, looking up from a math worksheet covered in Sophia's loopy handwriting. Clara must have looked as bad as she felt, because his expression immediately shifted to concern. "What happened?" "The FBI called." Clara's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "They want to talk to me." Sophia's eyes went wide. "Like actual FBI, with badges and guns?" "Sophia, go finish your homework in your room," Julian said. "But now, please." Something in his tone made the girl gather her things without further protest. She shot Clara a look that was equal parts sympathy and fascination before disappearing down the hallway. Julian waited until her door closed before turning back to Clara. "Tell me exactly what they said." Clara pulled out her phone, played the voicemail on speaker. Julian listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. "Rebecca's handling it," Clara said when the message ended. "She told me not to panic, that being contacted separately from Nathaniel might be good. She's right. It means they're building a case against him and they think you might cooperate." Julian leaned against the counter. "Did Rebecca explain what that cooperation would look like?" "Not yet. She's calling the agent back, setting up a meeting. You'll need to tell them everything, every document you signed, every conversation about business you overheard, every time Nathaniel asked you to authorize something you didn't understand." Julian paused. "It's going to feel like betrayal. Betraying someone who's trying to frame me for his crimes? Betraying 7 years of your life. Admitting you were complicit, even unknowingly, having to relive every moment you chose to trust him instead of questioning." Julian's voice was gentle but honest. "It's going to hurt worse than you expect." Clara sank onto one of the counter stools. "How do you know?" "Because I had to testify against a business partner once. Someone I'd known for 15 years. He was running a Ponzi scheme, and I didn't realize until investors started losing their retirement funds." Julian's jaw tightened at the memory. "I thought I was just providing character testimony. Turned out they needed me to explain how he'd hidden the fraud in our joint ventures. I felt like I was confessing to being an idiot in front of a courtroom." "Were you charged with anything?" "No. But I lost clients, lost credibility. Spent 2 years rebuilding my reputation." He met her eyes. "The truth protects you legally, Clara, but it doesn't protect you from feeling complicit in what happened." Clara's phone buzzed. Rebecca calling back already. "Agent Matthews is available tomorrow at 10 a.m., the attorney said without preamble. "Federal building downtown. I'll be there with you. He's agreed this is an informal interview, not a formal interrogation. But Clara, prepare yourself. They're going to ask hard questions." "What kind of questions?" "About your marriage, your finances, what you knew and when you knew it. They'll try to establish whether you were a victim or an accomplice." Rebecca's voice softened slightly. "Wear something conservative. No jewelry. Look like someone who needs help, not someone who benefited from criminal activity." The calculation of it made Clara feel sick. Even her appearance had to be strategic now. "I'll be ready," Clara said. After the call ended, she sat in Julian's kitchen feeling the weight of the next day pressing down. Tomorrow she'd walk into a federal building and either save herself or condemn herself, depending on how convincing her ignorance seemed. "You should eat something," Julian said, already moving toward the refrigerator. "I'm not hungry." "You need to eat anyway. Can't face federal investigators on an empty stomach." He pulled out ingredients with practiced efficiency: pasta, vegetables, olive oil. Within minutes, the kitchen filled with the smell of garlic and herbs. Clara watched him cook, grateful for something normal to focus on. "Do you always take care of people like this?" she asked. Julian glanced over his shoulder. "Like what?" "Like fixing problems isn't optional. Like other people's crises automatically become your responsibility." He was quiet for a moment, stirring pasta in boiling water. "After my wife died, people kept trying to help. Bringing casseroles, offering to watch Sophia, sending cards with messages about time healing all wounds. And I hated it. Hated feeling like a project, like someone who needed managing." "So why do it to me?" Because I learned something from hating it. He drained the pasta, tossed it with vegetables and oil. I learned that help feels condescending when it comes from obligation. But when someone helps because they actually see you as a person worth protecting, it's different. I'm not helping you because you're pathetic. I'm helping because you walked away from someone who was destroying you, and that takes strength I respect. He set a plate in front of her. The food looked and smelled better than anything Clara had eaten in weeks. They ate in silence for a while. Then Sophia appeared in the doorway, already in pajamas, despite it being barely 7 o'clock. "Can Clara read me a story?" she asked. Julian started to protest, but Clara cut him off. "Sure, if that's okay with your dad." Sophia's room was exactly what an 8-year-old's room should be. Books stacked everywhere, drawings taped to walls, a collection of stuffed animals arranged with what looked like careful hierarchy on her bed. Photos of a woman who must have been her mother smiled from frames on the dresser. "That's Mommy," Sophia said, following Clara's gaze. "She was pretty." "She was," Clara agreed. The woman in the photos had kind eyes and Sophia's same dark hair. Sophia climbed into bed, patting the space beside her. Clara sat carefully on the edge, took the book Sophia handed her. Something about dragons and girls who didn't need rescuing. "Do you miss being married?" Sophia asked suddenly. Clara looked down at the book. "I miss thinking I was married to someone real. Turns out I was married to a story he was telling." "That's sad." "Yeah, it is. Daddy says Mommy was real, that even though she's gone, the love was real." Sophia pulled her blanket up higher. "Is that true for you? Was the love real?" Clara thought about Nathaniel, about the early days when he'd seemed attentive and generous. Had that been love? Or had it been the beginning of control disguised as care? "I don't know," Clara said honestly. "I think I loved who I wanted him to be. I'm not sure I ever knew who he actually was." Sophia considered this with the seriousness of someone much older. "That sounds lonely." It was. "Are you still lonely?" Clara looked at this child who asked questions without fear, who said exactly what she thought, who somehow made vulnerability feel safe instead of dangerous. "Less than I was." Sophia smiled, satisfied. "Good. Now read. I want to know if the dragon learns to be nice." Clara read until Sophia's breathing evened out into sleep. She carefully extracted herself from the bed, turned off the light, and found Julian waiting in the hallway. "She likes you," he said quietly. "She's easy to like. Not for everyone. She scared off the last 3 babysitters by asking them uncomfortable questions about death and divorce." Julian smiled slightly. "Her therapist says it's healthy. I think it's genetic. Her mother had the same talent for cutting through nonsense." They walked back to the kitchen together. Through the windows, Chicago glittered against the darkness. "I should let you work," Clara said, "or sleep, or whatever you do at night that isn't managing other people's disasters. Actually, there's something you should see." Julian pulled up his laptop, turned it toward her. "Nathaniel held a press conference an hour ago." The video showed Nathaniel standing behind a podium, looking somber and concerned. Vanessa stood slightly behind him, not close enough to suggest intimacy, but present enough to make a statement. "I want to address the situation with my wife," Nathaniel said in the video, his voice heavy with false regret. "Clara is struggling with mental health issues that have been worsening over the past several months. Last night's incident at her birthday celebration was a cry for help that I failed to recognize soon enough. I take full responsibility for not getting her the treatment she needed before things reached this point." Clara felt the room tilt. He was painting her as unstable, as someone having a breakdown. The video continued. "I'm committed to supporting Clara through this difficult time while also ensuring our financial affairs are protected. Unfortunately, in her current state, she's made some decisions that could harm both of us legally and financially. I've had to take protective measures, but I want Clara to know that I still care about her well-being, and I'm ready to help whenever she's ready to accept it." A reporter's voice from off-camera. "Is it true your wife is now living with your business partner, Julian Mercer?" Nathaniel's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been genuine anger. "I can't speak to Clara's current living arrangements. I can only hope that anyone she's trusting right now has her best interests at heart, and isn't using her vulnerability for their own purposes." The implication was clear. Julian was taking advantage. Clara was too unstable to make rational decisions. The video ended. Clara stared at the frozen frame showing Nathaniel's concerned, caring expression. He's good at this. He's had practice. Julian closed the laptop. He's controlling the narrative, making you look unreliable before you can tell your side. By the time you do speak publicly, everyone will filter it through this framework that you're having a breakdown. So what do I do? Nothing, yet. Julian leaned against the counter. Let him keep talking. Let him build his story. Meanwhile, we build the evidence that proves he's lying. When you do speak, it won't be at a press conference. It'll be in a federal interview where facts matter more than performance. Clara's phone buzzed. A text from another unknown number. Your husband's right. You need help. Come home before you destroy yourself. She showed it to Julian. He frowned. That's what, the 5th anonymous message today? 7th, someone's coordinating, probably Nathaniel's PR team. Block them all. Don't engage. Julian's phone buzzed too. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. And now I'm getting them. Apparently I'm a predator taking advantage of a vulnerable woman. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for his tactics. Julian deleted the message. This is what he does. He makes people question themselves, doubt their perceptions, wonder if maybe they're the problem. Don't give him that power. Clara wanted to believe that, wanted to feel certain she was making the right choices. But doubt was easier than confidence after 7 years of being told her judgment was faulty. She went to bed that night in the guest suite, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing tomorrow's interview in her mind. What would she say when they asked if she knew? How could she prove ignorance without sounding stupid? How did you explain that love, or what she'd mistaken for love, had made her blind to things she should have seen? Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by anxiety dreams where she was signing documents that bled ink and federal agents who had Nathaniel's face. Morning arrived too soon. Clara dressed in the most conservative outfit from the clothes Julian had provided. Dark slacks, a simple sweater, no makeup beyond what made her look awake. She pulled her hair into a low ponytail, studied herself in the mirror. She looked young, uncertain, nothing like the polished wife who'd attended charity galas in designer dresses. Good. That was the image she needed. Julian was already up, making breakfast with Sophia. The normalcy of it, a father and daughter arguing about whether chocolate chips counted as a breakfast food, felt surreal given where Clara was headed in 90 minutes. You ready? Julian asked, sliding scrambled eggs onto a plate. No, but I don't think ready is an option. Rebecca met Clara in the lobby of the federal building at 9:45. The attorney looked sharp in a tailored suit, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than Clara's car. Remember, Rebecca said as they went through security, you're here voluntarily. You're cooperating. If anything makes you uncomfortable, we pause and consult. You don't have to answer every question, especially if I indicate you shouldn't. Understand? Clara nodded, though her understanding felt theoretical. She'd never been in a federal building before, never been questioned by investigators. Everything about this felt like a movie she'd accidentally stepped into. Agent Matthews was younger than Clara expected, maybe 40, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much white-collar crime. He met them in a conference room with a view of the Chicago River, introduced himself and his partner, Agent Rodriguez. Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Cross, Matthews said, gesturing to chairs. We appreciate your cooperation. My client is happy to help in any way she can, Rebecca said smoothly. Though we'd like to understand the scope of this investigation before we proceed. Matthews opened a folder. We've been investigating Nathaniel Cross's business dealings for approximately 8 months. Multiple irregularities have emerged regarding property valuations, loan applications, and fund transfers. Your name appears on a significant number of these documents. He slid several papers across the table. Clara recognized her signature on each one, though she barely remembered signing them. Mrs. Cross, can you tell us about your involvement in your husband's business operations? Matthews asked. Clara took a breath. I wasn't involved. I signed what he asked me to sign. Without reading the documents? Usually, yes. Why? The question hung in the air. Why had she been so careless with her own signature, her own legal liability? Because he told me I didn't need to understand the technical details, Clara said. Because questioning him meant I didn't trust him, and not trusting him meant the marriage was failing, and she stopped, gathered herself. Because for 7 years, he made every decision about our life, and signing documents was just one more way I let him control things. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Did your husband ever explicitly tell you these documents contained false information? No. I didn't know anything was wrong until Julian Mercer told me there were irregularities. When was that? 2 days ago, the night I left. Matthews made a note. You left your husband the same night you learned about potential fraud. That's convenient timing. Rebecca's hand moved slightly on the table, a warning. Clara chose her words carefully. I left because he brought his mistress to my birthday party. I learned about the business problems later that same night. But you'd suspected your husband was unfaithful for months, correct? Matthews flipped through his notes. According to credit card records we've obtained, there were hotel charges and gift purchases dating back at least 6 months. You didn't leave then. Why leave that specific night? Clara felt the trap closing. They were establishing that she'd known things were wrong but stayed anyway, which could suggest she was complicit, not a victim. I was gathering courage, Clara said quietly. Leaving a marriage isn't simple, especially when you have no money and nowhere to go. You had access to joint accounts worth millions, which my husband could freeze at any time, which he did the morning after I left. Clara met Matthew's eyes. I had $3,000 in a secret checking account. That was my entire safety net. Rodriguez slid another document across the table. This is a loan application for a property in Streeterville. $8 million. Your signature is here, co-signing for the debt. Do you remember signing this? Clara looked at the date. 2 years ago, April. She tried to remember what had happened that month. Nothing stood out. Just another month in a marriage that had blurred into a routine of charity dinners and silent dinners at home. I don't remember specifically, Clara admitted, but I probably signed it in my husband's office. He'd call me in, put papers in front of me, tell me where to sign. Did you ask what the property was worth? No. Did you ask what the loan was for? No. Did you ask anything at all about an $8 million debt you were legally liable for? Clara heard the judgment in the question. How could she have been so stupid, so careless? No, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I trusted him. Matthews leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Cross, I need you to understand something. Trust isn't a legal defense. If you sign documents authorizing fraud, your intent matters. Whether you knew matters, but your signature is still on paper that facilitated criminal activity. My client has acknowledged she signed documents, Rebecca interjected. She's also established a pattern of spousal control and manipulation that explains why she didn't question those documents. Unless you're prepared to charge her with a crime, I'd appreciate you treating her as the witness she is, not a suspect you're trying to trap. The two agents exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. We're not looking to charge you, Mrs. Cross, Rodriguez said, her tone gentler than Matthews's. We're trying to understand how Nathaniel Cross operated, how he convinced banks to loan money for overvalued properties, how he moved funds between accounts without triggering automatic reporting, how he maintained the appearance of legitimacy for 8 years while running what amounts to a sophisticated fraud operation. And you think I can help with that? Clara asked. We think you were present for conversations and transactions that your husband assumed you weren't paying attention to, Matthews said. We think you might remember details he didn't realize you noticed. We need you to tell us everything, even things that seem irrelevant. So Clara talked. For 3 hours, she walked through 7 years of marriage, pulling out every conversation she could remember about business. The late-night phone calls Nathaniel had taken in his office, the meetings with investors he'd hosted at the penthouse, the arguments he'd had with partners, including Julian, about corners being cut and documentation being adjusted. She told them about the time she'd accidentally seen an email chain discussing inflated appraisals, about overhearing Nathaniel tell someone to backdate a contract, about the offshore account statement she'd found hidden in his desk drawer and confronted him about, only to be told they were perfectly legal tax shelters that she wouldn't understand. The agents took notes, asked clarifying questions, pushed for specific dates and names. Did your husband ever mention someone named Marcus Leland? Matthews asked. Clara searched her memory. The name sounded familiar. I think he was an appraiser. Nathaniel used him for property valuations. Did you ever meet him? Once, at a dinner party 2 years ago. He seemed nervous around Nathaniel, like he was afraid of saying something wrong. Matthews and Rodriguez exchanged another look. Apparently Marcus Leland was significant. What about offshore accounts? Rodriguez asked. Did your husband ever discuss moving money out of the country? He mentioned the Cayman Islands once, said he was exploring legal tax strategies. Clara paused, remembering. This was maybe a year ago. He'd just finished a big development project and was angry about how much he owed in taxes. He said something about how stupid people paid full freight while smart people found creative solutions. Did he say what those creative solutions were? No, but a few weeks later he had me sign something at the bank. I remember because the bank manager seemed uncomfortable, kept asking if I understood what I was authorizing. Do you remember which bank? Clara named it. Matthews made a note that looked important. By the time the interview ended, Clara felt hollowed out. She'd spent 3 hours reliving her marriage, exposing every moment of willful ignorance, admitting to her own stupidity in front of federal agents and her attorney. You did well, Rebecca said as they left the federal building. You were honest, specific, and appropriately remorseful without claiming more knowledge than you had. Do they believe me? I think so. Matthews is a skeptic by nature, but Rodriguez seems sympathetic. The key question is whether a prosecutor would believe a jury would believe you. And will they? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Depends on how well Nathaniel's lawyers can paint you as complicit. You're educated, articulate, not the stereotypical vulnerable wife. A defense attorney could argue you knew exactly what you were doing and played dumb to avoid liability. But I didn't. I know. But court isn't about what's true. It's about what can be proven and what a jury believes. Right now, we're building your credibility as a witness against Nathaniel. If that works, you stay in the clear. If it doesn't, Rebecca stopped. Let's focus on making sure it works. Claire's phone rang as they stood on the courthouse steps. Julian. How'd it go? He asked when she answered. I don't know. Maybe okay? Clara watched pedestrians rush past, people with normal problems. I told them everything. That's good. That's what you needed to do. Julian, what if it's not enough? What if they decide I was lying? Then we deal with that when it happens. But Clara, spiraling about hypotheticals doesn't help. Come back to the apartment. Sophia wants to show you something she made at school. The normalcy of it, a child's art project, felt absurd juxtaposed against federal investigations and potential criminal charges. But it also felt like the only thing tethering Clara to reality. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. Rebecca left to file paperwork related to the divorce proceedings. Clara walked back to Julian's building alone, grateful for the cold air and the anonymity of being just another person on a Chicago sidewalk. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathaniel. I know you talked to the FBI. Whatever they promised you, whatever immunity they offered, it won't protect you from what's coming. Last chance to come home and handle this privately. Clara deleted it without responding. Another buzz. This time from an unknown number. Check your email. You need to see this. Against her better judgment, Clara opened her email. The message was from an address she didn't recognize, no subject line. Just a link to a private video. She almost didn't click it. But something made her thumb hover over the link, then press. The video loaded slowly. When it finally played, Clara's stomach dropped. It was security footage from Nathaniel's office. The date stamp showed 6 months ago. In the video, Clara sat at Nathaniel's desk while he stood over her shoulder, pointing at documents. Her own voice came through tinny speakers. What am I signing? Nathaniel's response, just trust me, Clara. I need your signature here and here. It's paperwork for the Streeterville project. Then Clara's voice again, quieter. This is a lot of money. Should I read it first? Nathaniel's laugh, condescending and familiar. You wouldn't understand it even if you did. Just sign. Unless you don't trust me. In the video, Clara signed without reading further. The footage cut off. Clara stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at her phone. Someone had sent her proof of exactly what she'd told the FBI, that Nathaniel had controlled her, pressured her, made her feel stupid for asking questions. But who had sent it, and why? A second email arrived. There's more where this came from. Security footage from his office going back 3 years. I can send it all to your attorney, or I can send it to Nathaniel's lawyers and let them destroy you with your own words. Your choice. Meet me tonight, Millennium Park, 9 p.m., by the Bean. Come alone. Clara's hand shook. This was either the evidence that could save her or a trap designed to bury her. She called Rebecca. "Don't go," the attorney said immediately. "It's obviously a setup. Either someone's trying to lure you into a compromising situation, or it's Nathaniel playing games." "But what if the footage is real? What if there's proof that backs up everything I told the FBI?" "Then whoever has it can send it to me directly. There's no legitimate reason to demand a secret meeting in a park at night." Rebecca was right. It was obviously a trap. But Clara couldn't stop thinking about that video, about the sound of her own voice asking to read documents, asking to understand being shut down by a man who'd spent 7 years making her doubt her own intelligence. She needed that footage, even if it meant walking into whatever trap was waiting. "I'll think about it," Clara told Rebecca, and ended the call before the attorney could argue further. Back at Julian's apartment, Sophia ambushed her at the door with a painting, something abstract involving a lot of purple and what might have been a dragon or possibly a dog. "It's you," Sophia announced proudly. "Escaping from the tower." Clara looked closer. The purple blob did seem to have long hair, and there was definitely a tower-like structure in the background, dark and looming. "It's beautiful," Clara said, meaning it. "Ms. Chen said we should paint about bravery, so I painted you." Sophia tilted her head. "You're brave, right? You're not going back to the tower?" The question hit harder than intended. Was she brave? Or just cornered? "I'm trying not to," Clara said. "Good. Because the dragon in my story learned to be nice, but real people don't usually change. Daddy says people show you who they are, and you should believe them." Julian appeared in the hallway, work shirt sleeves rolled up, phone pressed to his ear. He saw Clara and held up a finger. 1 minute. Clara sat with Sophia while the girl explained her painting in elaborate detail, complete with backstory for every purple brushstroke. The normalcy of it felt like a life raft. Julian finished his call, came to sit with them. "How was the FBI?" "Intense, but I think okay." Clara showed him the email on her phone. "Then I got this." Julian's expression darkened as he read. "Don't go." Rebecca said the same thing. "Then why do you look like you're considering it?" Because Clara was tired of other people making her decisions, even when those people were trying to help. Because somewhere in the past 48 hours, she'd started to realize that safety and agency weren't the same thing, and she'd traded too much agency for false safety already. "Because I need to know who sent it," Clara said, "and what they want. What they want is to hurt you. That's the only thing that makes sense. Or they want to help, and they're being cautious. Maybe it's someone who worked for Nathaniel, someone who has access to his security system." Julian stood, paced to the window. "Then they can send the footage directly to Rebecca. Demanding a secret meeting is, Clara, this is basic personal safety. You don't meet strangers in isolated locations." Millennium Park isn't isolated. It's public, well lit, lots of people around even at night. At 9 p.m. in November, it'll be cold and empty. Julian turned to face her. "I know you want to feel in control of this situation. I understand that, but control doesn't mean taking reckless risks." He was right. Clara knew he was right. But something about the footage in that video, about hearing her own voice asking reasonable questions and being dismissed, made her want the rest of whatever evidence existed. "What if I don't go alone?" Clara asked. "What if you come with me? Stay back, out of sight, but close enough to help if something goes wrong?" Julian looked at her for a long moment. "You're really going to do this regardless of what I say, aren't you?" "Probably." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Then yes, I'll come, but we do this smart. I call a security contact, someone who can be nearby watching. We set up a code word. If you use it, we intervene immediately. And if anything feels wrong, even slightly wrong, you walk away. Agreed?" "Agreed." Sophia looked between them, confused. "Are you going to fight the bad guys?" "No, sweetheart," Julian said. "We're just being careful." Careful is boring. Fighting bad guys is better. When you're older, you'll understand that careful is how you survive to fight another day. The rest of the afternoon passed in tense preparation. Julian made calls to a private security firm he'd used before. Rebecca called 3 more times trying to talk Clara out of going, finally giving up and insisting on a detailed safety plan. Clara spent the time watching Sophia play, struck by how the girl moved through the world with such certainty about what was right and wrong, fair and unfair. When had Clara lost that certainty? Or had she ever had it? At 8:30, Clara changed into warm clothes and a coat Julian provided. She checked her phone compulsively, half expecting a message canceling the meeting or revealing it as a prank. Nothing came. Julian drove them downtown, parking several blocks from Millennium Park. Two men in a dark sedan pulled up beside them. The security team. "You have your phone?" Julian asked. Clara held it up. "Code word is lighthouse. You say that, we come running. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to handle anything yourself. Just get information and get out." "I know." "Clara." He caught her hand. "I mean it. Nothing you might learn is worth getting hurt." His concern felt genuine, protective without being controlling. So different from Nathaniel's version of care. "I'll be careful," Clara promised. She walked toward the park alone, hands shoved in her pockets, trying to look casual despite her heart hammering. The park was quieter than during the day, but not deserted. A few people walked dogs. Tourists took photos of the city lights reflected in Cloudgate. The Bean, as locals called it. Clara positioned herself near the sculpture, visible but not isolated. She checked her phone. 8:58 p.m. At exactly 9 o'clock, a figure approached from the south entrance. Female, maybe mid-40s, wearing a long coat and scarf that obscured most of her face. "Clara Bennett?" the woman asked. "Who are you?" The woman glanced around nervously. "Someone who worked for your husband. Someone who knows what he's been doing and wants it stopped before more people get hurt." "What's your name?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that I have 3 years of security footage from Nathaniel's office. Every questionable conversation, every document you signed under pressure, every time he manipulated you into authorizing something illegal." The woman pulled a USB drive from her pocket. "It's all here." Clara stared at the small device. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because I watched him destroy other people's lives for years, and I stayed quiet because I needed the job. But after what he did to you at that party," the woman's voice cracked slightly, "someone needs to stop him, and you're the only one with the legal standing and the motivation to actually do it. You could go to the FBI yourself. I signed an NDA worth more than my house. If I break it, I lose everything. But you're his wife. You have immunity from testifying against him, but you also have every right to use evidence that proves your own innocence." The woman pressed the USB drive into Clara's hand. "Please, make it count." "Wait, I need to know who you are, in case the FBI needs to verify." But the woman was already walking away, disappearing into the park's shadows before Clara could follow. Clara stood alone, holding a USB drive that might contain her salvation or her destruction, with no way to know which until she looked. She turned to leave and found Nathaniel standing 10 feet away. "Interesting meeting," he said calmly. "Who was that?" Clara's blood turned to ice. "How did you think I don't have people watching Julian's building? You think I wouldn't know the moment you left?" Nathaniel stepped closer. "What's on the drive, Clara?" "I don't know." "Liar." His voice was still calm, but his eyes were cold. "Someone from my organization just handed you evidence. I need to know what they gave you." Clara's hand closed around the USB drive. She thought about the code word, about Julian and the security team waiting nearby. But saying lighthouse would bring them running, and Nathaniel wasn't threatening her physically. He was just standing there, talking, looking like a concerned husband trying to have a conversation. "Nothing that matters," Clara said, backing up a step. Nathaniel matched her movement, maintaining the distance. "Everything matters right now, Clara. Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every document. The FBI is building a case against me, and you're helping them. Do you understand what that means?" "It means I'm telling the truth. It means you're destroying any chance we had at handling this quietly, at protecting both of us." Nathaniel's voice dropped lower. "That drive contains security footage, doesn't it? From my office?" Clara didn't answer. "Clara." His tone shifted to something almost gentle. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be, but think about what you're doing. If you give that footage to investigators, you're not just hurting me. You're providing evidence of your own involvement. Every signature, every conversation, every moment you chose to trust me instead of asking questions. It's all there. And a good prosecutor will use it to argue you knew exactly what you were doing." The words hit like precision strikes because part of Clara worried he was right. That footage could prove manipulation, or it could prove complicity, depending on how it was interpreted. I need you to give me that drive, Nathaniel said. Please, before this gets worse for both of us. No. Clara. Lighthouse, Clara said clearly. Within seconds, Julian appeared from one direction and two security personnel from another. Nathaniel looked around, realizing he was surrounded. Really? Nathaniel's laugh was bitter. Private security? You're that afraid of me? I'm that done with you controlling my choices, Clara said, including whether I feel safe in public spaces. One of the security personnel, a broad-shouldered man who looked like he'd spent time in the military, stepped forward. Mr. Cross, we need you to step back. Nathaniel held up his hands in mock surrender. I'm just talking to my wife. That's not illegal. Your wife asked you to leave her alone. Continue to disregard that, and we'll have a problem. For a moment, Clara thought Nathaniel might argue. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched. Then he seemed to calculate the optics of getting into a physical confrontation with security guards while his wife watched. This isn't over, he told Clara. Whatever's on that drive, whatever you think it proves, it won't save you. You signed those documents. You authorized those transactions. Coming after me means coming after yourself. He walked away, disappearing into the park. Clara realized she was shaking. Julian was beside her immediately, hands gentle on her shoulders. You okay? He knew. He knew I'd be here. He has resources. Money buys surveillance. Julian looked at the USB drive still clutched in Clara's hand. Is that what I think it is? Security footage. 3 years' worth, apparently. Clara stared at it. Evidence that could save me or destroy me, depending on how it's interpreted. Then we watch it with Rebecca present. Let her determine what's relevant and what's dangerous. They drove back to Julian's building in silence. Clara couldn't stop replaying Nathaniel's words. Every signature, every conversation, every moment you chose to trust me. Had she chosen? Or had she been coerced so gradually that she hadn't recognized the walls closing in until there was no room left to move? Back at the apartment, Rebecca met them with her laptop ready. They sat in Julian's office while Sophia slept down the hall, unaware that the adults were about to watch years of evidence scroll past. The footage was extensive. Hours and hours of Clara sitting in Nathaniel's office, signing documents while he stood over her, directing her hand. Some conversations showed her asking questions. What is this for? Why do we need this? Should I read it first? Every time, Nathaniel redirected, dismissed, or outright pressured her into signing. But other footage showed her laughing with him, accepting his explanations without resistance, signing quickly while discussing dinner plans or weekend trips. Those moments looked less like coercion and more like complicity. This is both good and bad, Rebecca said after 2 hours of reviewing footage. The good. There's clear evidence of manipulation and control. The bad. There's also evidence that you were comfortable with the arrangement, that you benefited from not asking hard questions. So what do we do with it? Julian asked. We give it to the FBI. Let them see the full picture. If they're building a case against Nathaniel, this supports the narrative that he systematically deceived everyone around him, including his wife. Rebecca closed the laptop. But Clara, you need to prepare yourself. This footage will be used in court. Opposing counsel will play the moments where you look complicit. You'll have to explain why those moments don't contradict your claim of being manipulated. Clara felt exhausted. How do I explain that? By telling the truth. That manipulation doesn't look like obvious coercion. That it looks like trust weaponized against you. That controlling people don't announce they're controlling you. They make you believe you're making free choices right up until you realize you had no choices at all. It was past midnight when Rebecca finally left. Julian walked Clara to the guest suite. You should sleep, he said. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. They're all long days now. Julian hesitated in the doorway. For what it's worth, I watched that footage. I saw how he talked to you, how he made you question yourself every time you asked reasonable questions. That's not complicity. That's abuse. Would a jury see it that way? I don't know, but I see it that way. And I think anyone who's ever been in a relationship with someone who slowly erodes their confidence would see it too. After he left, Clara lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the USB drive now in Rebecca's possession, thinking about how 3 years of her life had been reduced to video evidence that strangers would analyze and judge. Her phone buzzed. A final text from Nathaniel. You chose this war. Remember that when it destroys you. Clara turned off her phone and closed her eyes, knowing sleep wouldn't come easily, but too tired to fight for it anymore. Outside the window, Chicago continued its indifferent march toward morning, unconcerned with the small human dramas playing out in its buildings. And somewhere in a federal office, agents were preparing the case that would either vindicate Clara or condemn her, and she wouldn't know which until it was far too late to change course. The USB drive sat on Rebecca's desk like evidence at a crime scene, which Clara supposed it was. 3 days had passed since the meeting in Millennium Park. 3 days of attorneys reviewing footage and federal agents asking follow-up questions, and Nathaniel's lawyers filing motion after motion trying to freeze Clara out of everything she'd ever touched. Clara had spent those days in a strange limbo, living in Julian's guest suite, picking up shifts at the diner when she could focus enough to pour coffee without spilling it, avoiding social media where strangers debated whether she was a victim or a gold digger. Sophia had taken to drawing Clara into her after-school routine like it was the most natural thing in the world, demanding help with homework and opinions on which stuffed animals should get priority bedtime placement. The normalcy of it felt wrong, like Clara was playing house in someone else's life while her own collapsed in slow motion. "The FBI wants the full footage," Rebecca said, pulling Clara back to the present. They were in the attorney's office, expensive view of the loop, coffee that actually tasted good for once. "Agent Matthews called this morning. They're prepared to offer you immunity in exchange for testimony against Nathaniel." Clara's stomach dropped. "Immunity for what? I haven't been charged with anything." "You haven't been charged yet. But that footage shows you signing documents that facilitated fraud. Immunity means they won't use any of it against you, as long as you cooperate fully." Rebecca leaned forward. "This is good news, Clara. This means they believe your version of events. They see you as a witness, not a co-conspirator." "What do I have to do?" "Testify. Possibly at trial, definitely in depositions. You'll have to explain every signature, every conversation, every moment you participated in Nathaniel's business operations. His lawyers will try to destroy your credibility. They'll paint you as bitter, vindictive, willing to lie to punish your ex-husband. You'll need to stay calm through all of it." Clara thought about sitting in a courtroom while strangers picked apart her marriage, her choices, her intelligence. "When?" "The immunity agreement needs to be signed by end of week. After that, we move forward with the divorce proceedings. Nathaniel's team is pushing for arbitration, wants to keep this out of court, handle the asset division privately." "Why would he want that?" Rebecca smiled thinly. "Because private arbitration means no public testimony, no reporters, no opportunity for you to speak openly about what happened. He wants to pay you to disappear quietly." "How much is he offering?" $2 million, plus the Honda, which is generous of him to allow you to keep your own car." The sarcasm was thick. "In exchange, you sign an NDA, agree not to disparage him publicly, and waive any claim to future earnings or assets." $2 million. More money than Clara had ever imagined having, enough to start over, to build a life that wasn't buried in legal fees and fear. "What would you advise?" Clara asked. "I'd advise you to tell him to go to hell." Rebecca pulled out another document. "You're entitled to half of marital assets acquired during the marriage. His net worth is approximately $400 million. Even accounting for prenuptial agreements and protected business assets, you're looking at a settlement north of $20 million if we fight." The numbers were absurd. Clara couldn't conceive of $20 million. Couldn't imagine what that kind of money would even mean in practical terms. "But it would take years to fight," Rebecca continued. "Years of depositions and court appearances and media coverage. Years of Nathaniel's lawyers trying to prove you're undeserving. And there's no guarantee we'd win. Prenups are hard to break, and his is airtight unless we can prove he coerced you into signing it." "Did he?" "You signed it 3 days before the wedding. You'd already sent invitations, booked the venue, committed to marrying him. A good lawyer could argue you were under duress, that backing out at that point would have been socially and emotionally devastating, so you signed despite reservations." Rebecca paused. "Did you have reservations?" Clara thought back to 7 years ago. She'd been so young, so convinced that marrying Nathaniel meant escaping a life of struggling to make rent and choosing between groceries and electric bills. The prenup had seemed like a formality, an acknowledgement that his money was his money and she was marrying him for love, not assets. Except she hadn't really known what love was. She'd known what safety felt like, or what she'd thought was safety. She'd known what it felt like to have someone powerful choose her, make her feel special, make her believe she deserved more than she'd been born into. I don't know if I had reservations, Clara said honestly. I had doubts, but I thought doubts were normal, that everyone gets scared before a wedding. Scared of what? Of not being good enough. Of him realizing he'd made a mistake marrying someone from the South Side who didn't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. Clara laughed bitterly. I spent 7 years trying to be worthy of him, trying to fit into his world, and the whole time he was just using me as a signature on fraudulent documents. Rebecca made notes. That's good. That's the narrative we need. Young woman from disadvantaged background, swept up by wealthy older man, systematically isolated and controlled until she believed her only value was in being compliant. Is that true, though? Or am I just rewriting history to make myself the victim? Does it matter? Clara, the law doesn't care about absolute truth. It cares about provable truth. And what we can prove is that Nathaniel Cross used his wife's signature to commit fraud, that he controlled her access to money and information, and that when she tried to leave, he immediately moved to destroy her financially and legally. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. You're allowed to be both complicit and victimized. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Clara's phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Sophia wants to know if you're coming to her school play tonight. I told her you might be busy, but she's insisting I ask. The text felt like a lifeline thrown into dark water, something normal and innocent in the middle of legal strategy and immunity deals. I need to go, Clara said, standing. I'll think about the settlement offer. Don't think too long. Nathaniel's lawyers want an answer by Friday. Clara left the office and walked toward the diner where she'd picked up 3 shifts this week. The work was grounding, taking orders, refilling coffee, making small talk with regulars who didn't care about scandals or billionaire divorces. Some customers recognized her from the news coverage, but most just wanted their eggs cooked right and their checks delivered promptly. Maggie, the owner, was wiping down the counter when Clara arrived for her shift. You look like hell, Maggie said by way of greeting. The woman was 65, had owned this diner for 30 years, and had never once sugar-coated anything. Thanks. I feel like hell. Nathaniel's lawyer's been here twice this week, offering money if I'll sign a statement saying you were unstable, talked about wanting to hurt your husband, displayed concerning behavior. Maggie snorted. I told them the only concerning behavior I witnessed was you working double shifts while married to a billionaire because he made you feel like you needed to earn your place in his life. Clara felt her throat tighten. You didn't have to do that. Sure I did. I don't like people who think money means they can rewrite reality. Maggie handed Clara an apron. Table 6 needs coffee. Table 3 is waiting on eggs. And that guy at the counter has been nursing the same water for 20 minutes, which means he's either broke or working up courage to ask someone out. The shift passed in a blur of orders and refills and the comfortable rhythm of work Clara actually knew how to do. Near the end, a woman in an expensive coat sat at the counter, ordered coffee she didn't drink, and waited until the diner was mostly empty. Clara Bennett? The woman asked quietly. Clara's guard went up immediately. Depends on who's asking. My name is Patricia Winters. I'm a journalist with Chicago Magazine. I'd like to talk to you about your marriage. No comment. I'm not looking for scandal. I'm working on a piece about financial fraud and the women who get caught in it. How smart, capable women end up signing documents they don't understand because the men in their lives have conditioned them to trust without questioning. Patricia slid a business card across the counter. I think your story matters. Not as tabloid gossip, but as something that happens more often than people realize. Clara picked up the card, studied it. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. You shouldn't trust anyone right now, including me. But I've been covering white-collar crime for 15 years, and I've watched a lot of wives get blamed for their husbands' crimes. Someone needs to tell the other side. Patricia stood, left a $20 bill for the coffee she hadn't touched. Think about it. My number's on the card. After her shift, Clara took the L north toward Julian's building. The train was crowded with people heading home from work, everyone buried in phones or books or their own thoughts. Clara wondered how many of them had secrets, had marriages that looked fine from the outside but were rotting from within, had signatures on documents they'd never actually read. At Julian's building, the doorman handed her a package that had arrived that afternoon. No return address, just her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Clara waited until she was in the guest suite before opening it. Inside was a single piece of paper, a photocopy of the prenuptial agreement she'd signed 7 years ago. Someone had highlighted several clauses in yellow, adding handwritten notes in the margins. The notes pointed out that the agreement had been written in deliberately confusing legal language, that Clara had been given less than 72 hours to review it, and that she'd signed without independent legal counsel present, all factors that could potentially invalidate the contract. At the bottom of the page, a handwritten message. He's been doing this for years. You're not the first woman he's controlled. You're just the first one brave enough to fight back. Don't give up. No signature, no way to trace who'd sent it. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, holding the paper, trying to process what it meant. Other women. Years of this pattern. How many people had Nathaniel hurt while everyone around him looked the other way because he was rich and powerful and good at maintaining appearances? A knock on the door pulled her out of the spiral. "It's me," Julian's voice called. "Sophia's asking if you're still coming tonight. The play starts at 7. Clara opened the door. Julian stood there in jeans and a sweater, looking tired but present. Behind him, Sophia bounced impatiently in the hallway. "Please come," Sophia said. "I'm playing a tree. It's a very important tree." Despite everything, Clara smiled. "The most important tree in the forest? Obviously, all the other trees are just background. I'm the tree that talks to the princess." Sophia grabbed Clara's hand. "You have to come. Daddy always falls asleep during school plays, and I need someone who will actually watch." "I do not fall asleep. You closed your eyes for 15 minutes during the Halloween program." "I was resting them." "You snored." Julian looked at Clara helplessly. "I had been up for 36 hours closing a deal, but apparently that's not an acceptable excuse." Clara found herself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in days. "Okay, I'll come. Let me change." She put on clean jeans and the sweater Julian had bought her that first day, pulled her hair into a ponytail. When she emerged, Sophia inspected her critically. "You look sad," the girl announced. "Sophia," Julian started. "What?" "She does. Her eyes are sad even when she's smiling." Sophia looked up at Clara. "Is it because of Mean Eyes Man?" Clara crouched down to Sophia's level. Yeah, he's making things complicated." "You should punch him." "Sophia." "What? That's what happens in my books. When someone's mean, the hero punches them and then they stop being mean." "Real life doesn't work that way," Julian said. "That's stupid. Real life should have more punching." The school auditorium was packed with parents and grandparents armed with phones and cameras. Clara sat between Julian and an empty seat that Sophia had insisted they save just in case Mommy's watching from wherever she is. The play was exactly what an elementary school production should be: enthusiastic, chaotic, with costumes made from household items and dialogue delivered at varying volumes. Sophia took her role as important tree very seriously, delivering her 3 lines with dramatic flair and only slightly wobbling in her cardboard trunk. Julian's phone buzzed repeatedly throughout the performance. He ignored it, eyes fixed on the stage, one hand drumming nervously against his knee during Sophia's scene. When it was over and the kids took their bows, Sophia searched the crowd until she found them, her face splitting into a huge grin when she saw Clara was actually there. "You came," she said afterward, still wearing her tree costume. "Did you see my part?" "You were incredible, best tree I've ever seen." "I know, right?" Sophia turned to her father. "Did you stay awake?" "The entire time." "Did you record it?" Julian's face fell. You forgot." Sophia's disappointment was crushing. "You always forget." "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I was watching. I just forgot to hit record." Clara held up her phone. "I recorded it, all of Sophia's scenes in the finale." Sophia's face brightened immediately. "Really? Really? I'll send it to your dad." Julian mouthed thank you, while Sophia demanded to watch the footage immediately. They stood in the school hallway while kids ran past in various states of costume removal, watching a shaky phone video of an 8-year-old girl playing a tree like her life depended on it. On the drive home, Sophia fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from performance adrenaline. Julian drove carefully, the city sliding past in streams of light. "You're good with her," he said quietly. "She's easy to be good with. She likes you, asks about you when you're not around, wants to know if you're staying, if you're okay. If Mean Eyes Man is going to hurt you. Julian glanced in the rearview mirror at his sleeping daughter. I don't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth. That things are complicated and scary, but I'm trying to be okay. She's 8. She wants guarantees. She wants to know that good people are safe and bad people get punished and everything works out the way it's supposed to. And you can't give her that. No one can. But it's harder when you're the parent and you're supposed to have answers. Julian pulled into the parking garage beneath his building. After her mother died, Sophia kept asking when she was coming back. And I kept trying to explain death, explain permanence, explain that some things don't have good reasons or fair outcomes. But 8-year-olds shouldn't have to understand that the universe is random and cruel. Clara thought about her own father, dead at 42 from a heart attack no one saw coming. She'd been 12. What did you finally tell her? That her mother loved her more than anything, and that love doesn't disappear just because the person does. That we carry people with us. Julian turned off the car. I don't know if it helped, but it was the best I had. They carried sleeping Sophia upstairs, her tree costume bunched awkwardly in Clara's arms. Julian put his daughter to bed while Clara waited in the kitchen, looking out at the city and thinking about love that didn't disappear, about carrying people even after they were gone. When Julian returned, he poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if Clara wanted one. Rebecca called while you were at the diner, he said. She told me about the settlement offer. You don't have to. $2 million is an insult. Nathaniel's worth $400 million, and he wants to pay you less than 1% to disappear. Julian handed Clara a glass. Don't take it. $20 million would take years to fight for. Years of my life consumed by legal battles and media coverage, and Nathaniel's lawyers trying to prove I don't deserve anything. So it takes years. You fight anyway. Easy for you to say. It's not your life getting picked apart in court. Julian set down his wine glass. You're right. It's not. And I'm not trying to tell you what to do with your life. But Clara, if you take that settlement, Nathaniel wins. He gets to walk away from fraud and manipulation and 7 years of abuse by paying what amounts to pocket change for him. He gets to control the narrative one more time. Or I take the money and build a life that isn't defined by him. Start over somewhere new, somewhere he can't touch me. Do you really think $2 million buys you that? He'll find ways to hurt you regardless. He'll use the NDA to silence you, prevent you from warning other women, make sure his reputation stays intact while yours gets destroyed. Julian's voice was intense now, urgent. I've watched men like Nathaniel my whole career. They don't stop unless someone forces them to stop. They don't learn. They don't change. They just find new victims. Clara thought about the anonymous note. Other women. Years of this pattern. Rebecca said, I'm allowed to be both complicit and victimized, Clara said quietly, that those things aren't mutually exclusive. But Julian, what if I was more complicit than victimized? What if I chose comfort over integrity? Chose to not ask questions because the answers might have been inconvenient? Then you're human. That doesn't mean you deserved what he did, doesn't it? I benefited from his fraud. Lived in a penthouse bought with illegal money. Wore clothes paid for with stolen funds. Attended charity galas funded by Clara. Julian moved closer. Not touching, but present. You can't retroactively assign guilt to someone who didn't have all the information. Yes, you benefited. Yes, you could have asked more questions. But he spent 7 years conditioning you not to ask questions, making you feel stupid for wanting to understand, isolating you from anyone who might have encouraged critical thinking. That's not complicity. That's systematic manipulation. How do you know? How can you be so sure I'm not just playing victim to avoid responsibility? Because I've watched you these past few days. I've watched you show up for FBI interviews even though you're terrified. I've watched you work diner shifts when you could be hiding in the guest suite feeling sorry for yourself. I've watched you record my daughter's school play because you knew it mattered to her even though your own life is falling apart. Julian's voice softened. Victims don't show up like that. Victims don't keep fighting when it would be easier to quit. You're not playing a role, Clara. You're surviving something that would have destroyed most people. Clara felt tears burning behind her eyes. She'd spent so many years being told her perceptions were wrong. Her concerns were overreactions. Her need for independence was selfishness. Having someone validate her reality instead of questioning it felt dangerous. Like letting her guard down might mean getting hurt again. I'm scared, she admitted, of testifying, of the trial, of everything that comes after. I know, that's reasonable. I'm scared of taking the settlement and regretting it, of fighting for more and losing everything, of trusting the wrong people again. Clara looked at Julian. How do you know who to trust? You don't. Not completely, but you make the best decision you can with the information you have, and you deal with the consequences. He paused. For what it's worth, I think you can trust Rebecca. She's ruthless, but she's on your side. I think you can trust the FBI agents, at least as much as anyone can trust federal investigators. And I hope, you can trust me. Why are you doing this? Really? Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because I spent 6 years married to someone I thought I knew, and when she died, I found journals she'd kept. Pages and pages about how lonely she was, how disconnected she felt, how I was always working and she was always waiting for me to notice she needed more than money and security. His voice cracked slightly. She was drowning, and I didn't see it because I was too busy building an empire I thought would make her happy. And now she's gone, and I can't fix it. I can't apologize or do better or prove I learned anything. He met Clara's eyes. But I can notice when someone else is drowning. I can choose to help instead of looking away. That's all this is. A chance to do something right this time. Clara understood then. They were both carrying ghosts, both trying to make better choices than the ones that had led them here. Okay, she said. I won't take the settlement. I'll fight. Julian nodded. Good. You'll need to prepare yourself, though. Nathaniel's going to come at you hard once he knows you're not backing down. The warning proved prophetic faster than either of them expected. The next morning, Clara woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Someone had leaked private text messages between her and Nathaniel from 2 years ago. Messages where Clara complained about money stress, asked Nathaniel to buy her things, talked about feeling trapped working at the diner. The messages were being framed as proof that Clara had married for money, that she was materialistic and manipulative, that her current victim narrative was just a strategy to maximize her divorce settlement. Clara read through them with growing horror, seeing her own words weaponized against her. The context was missing. The way Nathaniel had controlled all their finances, had made her ask permission for every purchase, had dangled money as proof of his affection while simultaneously making her feel guilty for needing it. But stripped of context, the messages looked bad. They looked like exactly what Nathaniel's lawyers wanted them to look like. Rebecca called at 8 a.m. Don't respond. Don't defend yourself on social media. Let me handle this. How did they even get those messages? Nathaniel turned over his phone records to his legal team. They cherry-picked the messages that support their narrative and leaked them to a friendly reporter. Rebecca's voice was tight with anger. It's a classic move. Muddy the waters. Make you look mercenary. Turn public opinion against you before trial even starts. It's working. Have you seen the comments? Don't read the comments, Clara. I mean it. Nothing good comes from reading the comments. But Clara had already seen them. Hundreds of strangers calling her a gold digger, a liar, a woman who married for money and was now playing victim for more money. The support she'd received after the birthday party video had evaporated, replaced by contempt and mockery. Sophia found her crying in the kitchen an hour later. Mean Eye's man did something bad again? The girl asked. Clara wiped her eyes quickly. Yeah, he's telling lies about me. Are people believing the lies? Some of them. Sophia climbed onto the stool next to Clara. Daddy says truth is harder than lies because lies can be whatever people want to hear, but truth just is, even when nobody believes it. Your dad's smart. I know. He has 3 college degrees. Sophia swung her legs, thinking, will you still be here for Thanksgiving? The question caught Clara off guard. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. She hadn't thought about holidays, hadn't considered that life would continue to march forward regardless of legal battles and leaked messages. I don't know, Clara said honestly. You should stay. We always have too much food and Daddy gets sad on holidays because Mommy's not here. You could help make it less sad. The simple invitation nearly broke Clara. This child who'd lost her mother, this girl who understood pain in ways 8-year-olds shouldn't have to, was offering comfort to a stranger because she recognized someone else who was hurting. I'd like that, Clara said, if your dad's okay with it. He'll be okay with it. He likes you even though he pretends he's just being helpful. Sophia grinned conspiratorially. He smiles different when you're around, like real smiling, not polite smiling. Before Clara could process that observation, Julian appeared in the kitchen doorway holding his phone, his expression grim. Sophia, go get your backpack ready for school. But now, please. Something in his tone made Sophia obey without argument. Once she was gone, Julian showed Clara his phone screen. It was a news article from that morning. FBI widens investigation into Cross Development Corporation. Sources say criminal charges imminent. Clara felt her heart stop. Is that good or bad? For Nathaniel, very bad. For you? Julian scrolled down to show her the relevant paragraph. It means the immunity deal becomes official today. Rebecca's meeting with federal prosecutors this afternoon to finalize terms. Once you sign, you're protected from prosecution for anything related to Nathaniel's fraud. And then what? Then you testify. You tell them everything, and Nathaniel goes to prison. The reality of it hit Clara all at once. Her husband, ex-husband, soon, was going to be arrested, charged with federal crimes, potentially sent to prison for years, and her testimony would help put him there. 7 years ago, she'd married him thinking he'd keep her safe. Now she was helping destroy him to save herself. I need air, Clara said. She grabbed a coat and went out to the terrace, the cold November wind cutting through her clothes. Chicago spread below, indifferent to her crisis. Somewhere in this city, Nathaniel was probably getting the same news, probably calling his lawyers, probably planning his next move against her. The terrace door opened. Julian stepped out, holding 2 coffee mugs. You don't have to keep taking care of me, Clara said. I know, but coffee helps most problems. And the problems it doesn't help at least become more bearable with caffeine. He handed her a mug. Talk to me. What are you thinking? That I never wanted this, any of this. I just wanted out of the marriage. I didn't want to destroy his entire life. He destroyed his own life by committing fraud. You're just refusing to go down with him. Is there a difference? Julian leaned against the railing beside her. Yeah, there is. If you'd stayed silent, taken the settlement, signed the NDA, he would have kept doing this, kept defrauding investors, kept using women's signatures to hide his crimes, kept building his empire on illegal foundations. How many more people would he have hurt? Clara thought about the anonymous notes, the mysterious woman who'd handed her the USB drive. Other women, other victims. Do you think he's done this before? The marriage thing? I know he has. He was married once before you. Wife was 22 when they married, 30 when they divorced. Settlement was sealed, but rumors suggested she knew things about his business practices that could have been problematic. Julian paused. 6 months after the divorce was final, she moved to Europe. No one's heard from her since. The implication hung heavy between them. You think he threatened her? I think powerful men with secrets have ways of making problems disappear. And I think you refusing to disappear is braver than you realize. Clara's phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Immunity deal is signed. You're officially protected. Now the real work begins. Real work. Testimony. Depositions. Trial. Months or years of her life dedicated to proving what Nathaniel had done and what she hadn't known. But also freedom. Protection. A legal guarantee that she wouldn't be punished for crimes she'd been manipulated into facilitating. I should tell you something, Julian said suddenly. Something I should have mentioned earlier. Clara's stomach clenched. What? The Lakeshore project, the one at the center of the fraud investigation, I was an investor. I put in $12 million based on property valuations Nathaniel provided. Valuations that turned out to be inflated by 40%. Julian's jaw tightened. When this all comes out, when he's charged and the properties are reassessed, I'm going to lose most of that investment, probably $8 or $9 million. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to think I was helping you for financial revenge. I'm not trying to recoup losses through your testimony. I'm trying to stop someone who's been lying to everyone, including his business partners. He looked at her directly. But you deserve to know my motivations aren't completely altruistic. I have skin in this game too. Clara processed this new information. Julian wasn't just a generous stranger helping out of pure kindness. He had his own reasons for wanting Nathaniel exposed. And somehow, knowing that made her trust him more, not less. Complicated motivations felt more honest than simple heroism. Thank you for telling me, Clara said. Thank you for not assuming it changes anything. They stood in silence, drinking coffee, watching the city wake up below. Somewhere out there, Nathaniel was facing the collapse of everything he'd built on lies, and Clara was facing the reconstruction of a life she'd barely started living before he'd taken control of it. Inside, Sophia was singing something off-key while Marie tried to wrangle her into a coat for school. Normal life continuing despite everything. "Your daughter thinks you smile differently when I'm around," Clara said. Julian's expression flickered with something that might have been embarrassment or pleasure or both. "She's observant." "Is it true?" "Probably. Sophia notices things adults try to hide." He turned to look at Clara. "You make the apartment feel less empty, less like we're just marking time between tragedies." The honesty of it took Clara's breath away. No pretense, no performance, just truth delivered plainly. Before she could respond, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned. "It's my attorney. I should take this." He stepped inside, leaving Clara alone on the terrace. Her own phone buzzed. Another unknown number, another message. "You're making a mistake. The FBI will use you and throw you away. Nathaniel's offering you a way out. Take it before it's too late." Clara deleted it without responding. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with whatever came next. The immunity papers were waiting at Rebecca's office when Clara arrived that afternoon. Pages and pages of legal language that essentially promised the government wouldn't prosecute her for signing documents she hadn't read while married to a man who'd lied about everything. "Once you sign this, you're committed," Rebecca said. "You can't change your mind later, can't decide you don't want to testify. The deal is contingent on your full cooperation." Clara picked up the pen. Her hand shook slightly. She thought about 7 years of signing whatever Nathaniel put in front of her, trusting blindly, choosing ignorance over the discomfort of asking hard questions. This was different. This time she understood exactly what she was signing and why. Clara signed her name and dated it. "Okay," Rebecca said, gathering the papers. "Now we prepare you for deposition. Nathaniel's lawyers will try to tear apart your credibility. We need you ready for every possible attack." They spent 3 hours rehearsing questions and answers. Rebecca played the role of hostile attorney, asking about the text messages, about money Clara had spent, about gifts she'd accepted, about times she'd seemed happy in the marriage. "If you seemed happy, how can you claim you were being controlled?" Rebecca demanded, channeling opposing counsel. "Because happiness and control aren't opposites. I was happy when I was complying, when I wasn't asking questions, when I was being the wife he wanted me to be. The control was invisible until I tried to exercise independence." "Give me an example," Clara thought back. 3 years ago, I got offered a job, teaching position at a community college. Part-time, nothing major. But it was something I'd wanted. To go back to school, to work in education instead of service industry. Nathaniel said, of course I could take it, that he supported whatever made me happy. So he wasn't controlling? He supported it right up until I actually accepted the position. Then suddenly there were conflicts. Charity events scheduled on nights I needed to be in class. Important dinners with investors that I couldn't miss. His mother coming to visit the same week I had orientation. Every time I tried to prioritize the job, there was some crisis that needed me to be the supportive wife instead. Clara's voice hardened. After 3 months of missing classes and disappointing my supervisor, I quit. And Nathaniel was so understanding, so sympathetic about how the timing just didn't work out. How maybe I could try again later when our schedule was less busy. Later never came? Later never came. Rebecca nodded, satisfied. That's good. That's the kind of specific, verifiable detail that builds credibility. We need dozens of examples like that. They worked until Clara's head hurt and her voice went hoarse. By the time she left the office, the sun was setting and her phone was full of missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize, reporters probably, or Nathaniel's people trying to intimidate her. She took the train back to Julian's building, grateful for the anonymity of public transit. No one looked twice at a tired woman in a cheap coat, even if that woman was at the center of a federal fraud investigation. At the building, the doorman handed her a sealed envelope. "This arrived by messenger an hour ago," he said. The delivery person insisted it was urgent. Clara took it upstairs before opening it. Inside was a single photograph. Clara and Julian on the terrace this morning, standing close, looking at each other. The angle suggested it had been taken from another building with a telephoto lens. Below the photo, a typed message. "Careful who you trust. Not everyone helping you has pure motivations. Some people are just using you to hurt Nathaniel. No signature. But the implication was clear. Someone was watching. Someone wanted her to doubt Julian. Clara stared at the photo, at the way Julian was looking at her in the captured moment. Was it genuine concern? Or was Sophia right? Was there something else there, something more complicated? And did it matter? Even if Julian had mixed motivations, even if part of his help was strategic rather than altruistic, he'd still given her safety when she had nowhere else to go. He'd still treated her with more respect in 5 days than Nathaniel had in 7 years. She burned the photo in the kitchen sink, watching it curl and blacken until nothing remained but ash. Whatever games Nathaniel was playing, whatever doubts he was trying to plant, Clara was done letting him control her perception of reality. She'd signed the immunity papers. She'd committed to testimony. She'd chosen to fight instead of disappearing quietly. Now she just had to survive whatever came next. The ashes of the photograph dissolved under running water, gray residue swirling down the drain. Clara stood at Julian's kitchen sink, watching the last evidence of Nathaniel's intimidation disappear, and felt something shift inside her. Not confidence exactly, that would take longer to rebuild, but a kind of grim determination. He wanted her scared and doubting everyone around her. She was done giving him what he wanted. "What are you burning?" Sophia's voice came from behind her. Clara turned off the water. Just some trash that needed to go away. Trash doesn't usually need fire. Sophia climbed onto a stool, eyeing the sink suspiciously. Was it from Mean Eyes Man? Something like that. Good. Fire is the right choice for his stuff. Sophia pulled out homework from her backpack. Daddy says you're helping put him in jail. Is that true? Clara hesitated, unsure how much Julian had explained to his daughter. It's complicated. I'm telling the truth about things he did wrong. What happens to him after that isn't really up to me. But you want him to go to jail. Did she? Clara examined the question honestly. A week ago, she would have said she just wanted to be free of him. But now, knowing about other women, other victims, the systematic way he'd built an empire on fraud and manipulation, yeah, she wanted him to face consequences. I want him to stop hurting people, Clara said carefully. Sometimes that means prison. Sophia considered this while arranging her pencils in precise order. When kids at school do bad things, they have to sit in time out and think about what they did. But they always come back meaner after. Like the thinking doesn't change them, it just makes them better at hiding. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. Clara thought about Nathaniel in prison, imagined him using the time to plan revenge, to refine his methods, to come back more dangerous than before. But what was the alternative? Let him walk away unpunished? You're probably right, Clara admitted, but we still have to try. We still have to believe that consequences matter even when they don't fix everything. Julian appeared in the kitchen doorway, phone pressed to his ear, his expression unreadable. He held up a finger, 1 minute, and disappeared into his office. Sophia leaned across the counter conspiratorially. He's been on the phone a lot. I think something big is happening. With work? Maybe. Or maybe with Mean Eyes Man. I heard him talking to his lawyer about depositions and testimony and stuff. Sophia lowered her voice even more. Do you think Daddy's in trouble too? Because of the business stuff? The question revealed how much this child had absorbed, how many adult conversations she'd overheard and pieced together. Clara's heart ached for her. Your dad's not in trouble. He's helping make sure the truth comes out. Clara hoped that was accurate. Sometimes that's expensive and stressful, but it's not the same as being in trouble. But he lost money because of Mean Eyes Man's lies, right? That's what I heard Marie telling someone on the phone, that Mr. Mercer lost millions. Your dad's smart with money. He'll be okay. That's what he says too. But I think adults lie to kids a lot when they're trying to protect us from scary things. Sophia went back to her homework, underlining something with careful precision. I'd rather know the truth and be scared than believe lies and feel safe. Clara wondered when this child had become so wise, and whether that wisdom had come at too high a cost. No 8-year-old should have to choose between truth and comfort. But grief had a way of aging people regardless of their actual years. Julian emerged from his office 20 minutes later looking like he'd aged several years in a single phone call. He went straight to the liquor cabinet, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, and drank half of it before speaking. Nathaniel's been arrested, he said quietly. Federal agents picked him up an hour ago, wire fraud, bank fraud, tax evasion. 12 counts total. Clara's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the nearest stool. When's the arraignment? Tomorrow morning. Rebecca says you don't have to be there, but it might help you psychologically to see him in handcuffs. Julian finished his whiskey. His lawyers are already calling it a witch hunt. They're planning to argue selective prosecution, claiming the feds are only going after him because of political pressure and media attention. Will that work? Probably not. The evidence is pretty damning. Your testimony, the security footage, financial records the FBI seized from his office. It all points to systematic fraud going back at least 8 years. Julian poured another drink, stared at it without drinking. His bail hearing is going to be interesting. Flight risk argument practically makes itself given his offshore accounts. Sophia had gone very still at the counter, pencil frozen mid-word. They arrested him, like with handcuffs and everything. Julian looked at his daughter, clearly calculating how much to share. Yeah, sweetheart. He broke a lot of laws and now he has to answer for it. Good. Sophia went back to her homework with fierce concentration. People who hurt other people should have to answer. Clara's phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Arraignment tomorrow 9 a.m. Your presence is optional but recommended. Nathaniel's team will be measuring your reaction, so prepare yourself emotionally. Prepare yourself emotionally, as if that were possible. As if Clara could prepare for watching the man she'd spent 7 years married to stand before a judge in federal court, charged with crimes that could send him to prison for decades. She texted back, I'll be there. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in the guest suite staring at the ceiling, playing through possibilities. What if Nathaniel made bail? What if his lawyers found some technicality that got the charges dismissed? What if the jury believed his story over hers? At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. Julian was already there, sitting at the counter with his laptop open, spreadsheets glowing in the darkness. Can't sleep either? Clara asked. He looked up, startled. Didn't hear you come in. Want coffee? I've had 4 cups already, so what's one more path to insomnia? Clara sat beside him while he made coffee in the expensive machine that probably cost more than her car. The ritual of it was soothing, grinding beans, measuring water, waiting for the brew to finish. What are you working on? Clara asked, nodding at the laptop. Damage assessment, figuring out what I'm going to lose when the Lakeshore project collapses completely. Julian handed her a mug. Current estimate is about $9 million, but it could go higher depending on how the bankruptcy court handles things. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made the investment based on fraudulent information. That's on Nathaniel, not you. He took a long drink of coffee. Although I should have done more due diligence. Should have questioned the valuations, insisted on independent appraisals. I got lazy because Nathaniel and I had worked together before and I trusted him. You're not the only one who trusted him? No. But I'm supposed to be smarter about business. I've been doing this for 15 years. I should have known better. Julian's expression was frustrated, angry at himself. I convinced 3 other investors to come in on the project. Friends who trusted my judgment. They're going to lose money too because I didn't do my job properly. Clara heard the echo of her own self-recrimination in his words, both of them beating themselves up for trusting someone who'd been systematically lying. Rebecca told me I'm allowed to be both complicit and victimized, Clara said. That those things can coexist. Maybe that's true for you too. You made decisions based on fraudulent information while also being a skilled investor who should have caught the fraud. Both things can be true. Julian smiled slightly. Using my own attorney's logic against me seemed appropriate. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching Chicago sleep through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere in this city, Nathaniel was in federal custody, probably not sleeping either, probably calling every lawyer and connection he had trying to fix this. What happens if he makes bail tomorrow? Clara asked. Then he's out until trial. Could be months. He'll have restrictions, surrender his passport, probably ankle monitor, regular check-ins with pretrial services. But he'd be free to move around to continue trying to intimidate you. That's what I'm afraid of. Julian turned to look at her directly. I won't let him hurt you. You can't promise that. You can't control what he does. No. But I can make sure you're protected. Security, lawyers, whatever it takes. Julian's voice was firm. Clara, I know I can't guarantee your safety completely, but I can guarantee you won't face this alone. That has to count for something. It counted for more than Clara knew how to express. She'd spent 7 years alone in a marriage, isolated from everyone who might have helped her see the truth. Now, facing the consequences of finally telling that truth, she had someone willing to stand with her. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. I know I keep saying that, but I don't know what else to say." "You don't have to say anything, just—" Julian stopped, reconsidered his words. "Just keep fighting. Keep refusing to disappear. That's enough." Clara's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won. You haven't. Tomorrow is just the beginning of your nightmare." She showed it to Julian without comment. He read it, deleted it, and blocked the number. "How many of those have you gotten?" he asked. "Dozens, from different numbers every time. Forward them all to Rebecca. She can show them to the prosecutors as evidence of witness intimidation." Julian's jaw tightened. Nathaniel's digging his own grave deeper with every threatening message. Morning came too soon. Clara dressed in the conservative outfit Rebecca had recommended. Dark suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. She looked like she was going to a funeral, which felt appropriate. Today marked the death of whatever remained of her marriage to Nathaniel Cross. The federal courthouse was surrounded by reporters when they arrived. Rebecca had prepared Clara for this, but seeing the cameras and microphones and shouted questions was still overwhelming. "Mrs. Cross, do you feel vindicated by the arrest? Clara, are you pursuing full divorce proceedings? Is it true you're living with Julian Mercer? Are you two involved romantically?" Rebecca cut through the crowd like a ship through water, Clara following in her wake. Julian had stayed behind. His presence would only fuel speculation and distract from the real story. Inside, the courthouse was cold marble and security checkpoints and lawyers in expensive suits clustering in hallways. Rebecca guided Clara to the courtroom where Nathaniel's arraignment would take place. "Remember," Rebecca said quietly, "no reactions. Whatever happens, whatever he looks like, whatever his lawyers say, you stay neutral. They're watching you." The courtroom filled quickly with reporters, federal prosecutors, Nathaniel's legal team. Clara sat in the back, trying to be invisible, trying to prepare herself for seeing him. When they brought Nathaniel in, Clara's breath caught. He looked terrible. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his face showing a night without sleep. But worse than his physical appearance was the expression in his eyes when they found Clara across the courtroom. Pure hatred, barely contained behind the mask of composure he was trying to maintain. The arraignment itself was brief and procedural. The judge read the charges, 12 counts of fraud, each one detailed and damning. Nathaniel's attorney entered a plea of not guilty, requested bail, argued that his client was a respected businessman with deep ties to the community who posed no flight risk. The federal prosecutor countered with evidence of offshore accounts, passport applications for multiple countries, and recent transfers of assets to untraceable corporations. They argued Nathaniel was absolutely a flight risk, that he had both means and motive to disappear. The judge listened to both sides, reviewed documents, and set bail at $20 million. Clara felt the number like a physical blow. $20 million. Even for Nathaniel, that was substantial. It meant the court took the charges seriously, meant they believed he might actually run. "Cash or bond," the judge continued. "Surrender of passport, ankle monitor, no contact with any witnesses, including—" She consulted her notes. "Clara Bennett Cross, Julian Mercer, or any employees of Cross Development Corporation." Nathaniel's jaw tightened at the no-contact order, but he nodded acceptance. The entire proceeding took less than 30 minutes. Then it was over. Nathaniel was led out by federal marshals while his attorneys immediately began making calls, presumably arranging bail. Clara left the courthouse through a side entrance Rebecca had scouted earlier, avoiding most of the media crush. But one reporter managed to corner her in the parking garage. "Mrs. Cross?" Patricia Winters, Chicago Magazine. "We spoke briefly at the diner. Can I ask you one question?" Clara recognized her, the journalist who'd wanted to write about financial fraud and the women caught in it. "One question," Clara said. "How does it feel watching your husband get arrested for crimes you helped expose?" Clara thought about easy answers, soundbite responses that would play well on camera. But Patricia had been honest with her, had treated this as something more than tabloid gossip. She deserved honesty in return. "It feels necessary," Clara said, "and sad, and terrifying, and like something I should have done years ago but was too scared to try. She met Patricia's eyes. It feels like I'm finally choosing myself over someone who never actually chose me. That's the best answer I have. Patricia nodded, satisfied. Thank you. That's honest. Rebecca appeared, gently steering Clara toward the waiting car. But Patricia called after them. The piece I'm writing, it won't be published for another 2 months after the trial. But when it comes out, I want you to know I'm telling the full story. Not just the scandal, the pattern. The system that enables men like Nathaniel to destroy women like you and call it marriage. Clara felt something crack open in her chest. Someone understood. Someone saw past the headlines to the actual truth. Thank you, she said, and meant it. Back at Julian's apartment, Sophia was waiting with questions Clara didn't know how to answer. Did they put him in jail? The girl asked. For now. He might make bail, which means he could get out until trial. That's stupid. If someone's dangerous, they shouldn't get out just because they have money. You're not wrong. Sophia thought about this while arranging her stuffed animals in what appeared to be a courtroom configuration. If he gets out, will he try to hurt you? Clara wanted to lie to protect this child from adult fears, but Sophia had asked for truth over comfort, and she deserved that respect. He might try, but there are rules now about him staying away from me, and your dad has security to make sure I'm safe. Good. Because you're part of our family now, and we protect family. Sophia said it with such certainty, such simple conviction that Clara felt tears threaten. Sweetheart, I'm not. Yes, you are. You live here. You come to my school plays. You help with homework. That's family stuff. Sophia looked up from her stuffed animals. Unless you don't want to be? Are you going to leave once the trial is over? Clara realized she hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been so focused on surviving each day, each legal hurdle, each threat from Nathaniel, that she hadn't considered what came after. Where would she go? What would she do? Who would she be when this was all over? I don't know, Clara said honestly. I haven't planned that far ahead. Well, you should stay here. Daddy's less sad when you're around, and I like having you here. You're better than the last person who stayed in the guest suite. Who was that? Daddy's college friend who got divorced and needed somewhere to stay for a month. He was boring, and he didn't like kids. Sophia arranged a teddy bear in the judge's position. You're way better. Julian appeared in the doorway. Sophia, stop recruiting house guests. Clara's not staying just because you've decided she's family. Why not? We have extra rooms. She needs somewhere safe. It's logical. It's also not your decision. But Julian's tone was gentle, amused rather than annoyed. Give us a minute, please. Sophia gathered her stuffed animals and departed with theatrical sighs about adults making everything complicated. Julian sat down across from Clara. I'm sorry. She gets attached quickly and she doesn't understand boundaries very well yet. Don't apologize. Clara stopped, surprised to find herself emotional. It's nice. Being wanted somewhere, being considered family by someone who doesn't have an agenda. For what it's worth, she's not wrong about the less sad part. The apartment feels different with you here, more like a home than a museum. Julian paused. But she's also 8 and doesn't understand that you might need your own space, your own life, once this is over. What if I don't know what my own life looks like? The question came out more vulnerable than Clara intended. I've been someone's daughter, then someone's wife. I don't know how to just be Clara. I don't know who that person even is. Then maybe that's what you figure out next. After the trial, after the divorce is final, after Nathaniel is sentenced, maybe you take time to discover who you are when you're not defined by someone else. It sounded simple when he said it, but Clara knew the reality would be harder. 7 years of conditioning didn't disappear just because she'd walked away. 7 years of being told her thoughts were wrong. Her concerns were overreactions. Her need for independence was selfishness. That left marks that would take years to heal. I'm scared, Clara admitted, of testifying, of facing Nathaniel in court, of his lawyers making me look stupid or complicit, or you're going to be fine, you're going to tell the truth, and let the evidence speak for itself. Julian's confidence felt borrowed, but Clara clung to it anyway. And when it's over, when he's convicted and sentenced and finally out of your life, you're going to build something new, something that's entirely yours. Clara wanted to believe that, wanted to imagine a future where she wasn't looking over her shoulder, wasn't waiting for the next threat, or intimidation tactic or legal maneuver designed to destroy her. Her phone buzzed. Rebecca calling. Nathaniel made bail, the attorney said without preamble. Posted $20 million an hour ago. He's out but under strict monitoring. If he violates the no contact order, he goes straight back to jail with no bail option. So he's free, technically, but the ankle monitor limits his movements and the feds are watching him closely. Plus, Clara, I have good news. The trial date got moved up. Judge wants this resolved quickly, given the media attention. We're looking at 6 weeks, maybe 8. 6 weeks. Clara had expected months, maybe a year of waiting. 6 weeks meant preparing faster, testifying sooner, facing Nathaniel in court before Christmas. Can I be ready in 6 weeks? You'll have to be. I'll schedule daily prep sessions starting tomorrow. We need to rehearse every possible question his lawyers might ask, prepare you for cross-examination, make sure you can maintain composure under pressure. Rebecca's voice softened slightly. I know it's overwhelming, but faster is actually better. Gets you through this and into your new life sooner. After the call ended, Clara told Julian about the accelerated timeline. Good, he said. Less time for Nathaniel to plan counterattacks. Less time for fear to build up. He checked his watch. I have a conference call in 10 minutes, but after that, want to help Sophia and me with Thanksgiving prep? We're making lists and she insists you need to weigh in on whether we do sweet potato casserole or mashed potatoes. Both, obviously. That's what I said? But she's concerned about too much food. Clara laughed, and realized it was the first time in days she'd felt anything close to normal. Tell her we can never have too much food on Thanksgiving. It's basically the law. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Daily sessions with Rebecca, rehearsing testimony until Clara could recite answers in her sleep. Meetings with federal prosecutors who walked her through evidence, showed her documents she'd signed, asked her to explain her state of mind during various transactions. It was exhausting and humiliating and necessary. Meanwhile, life continued with strange normalcy. Clara kept picking up shifts at the diner. Sophia kept demanding help with homework and opinions on important matters, like whether dolphins or sharks were cooler. Julian kept making breakfast every morning, a routine Clara had been absorbed into without conscious decision. Thanksgiving arrived cold and bright. Clara woke to the smell of turkey and Sophia's off-key singing drifting through the apartment. For a moment, before full consciousness returned, she felt peaceful, safe. Then reality crashed back. The trial started in 3 weeks. Nathaniel was out on bail, probably planning his defense, probably directing his lawyers to destroy her credibility. The immunity deal protected her legally, but not emotionally. But today was Thanksgiving. Today was about being present with people who'd chosen to make space for her in their lives. Sophia appointed herself head chef despite being 8 and having limited cooking knowledge. She directed operations from a stool at the kitchen counter, telling Clara and Julian where things went wrong and offering suggestions that were wildly impractical. We should add chocolate chips to the stuffing, she announced. Absolutely not, Julian said. Why not? We add them to pancakes. Pancakes are not stuffing. That's discrimination against chocolate chips. Clara found herself laughing so hard she had to sit down. This child, this beautiful, chaotic child who decided Clara was family, who pushed back against arbitrary rules, who found joy even in grief. She was giving Clara a glimpse of what life could be like. Not perfect, not without pain, but full of moments worth showing up for. They ate dinner at the big table overlooking the city, just the 3 of them. Sophia said they should go around and say what they were thankful for because that's what her class had done. I'm thankful for my dad, Sophia said, and for Clara being here, and for Mean Eyes Man going to jail soon, and for chocolate chips existing even though Dad won't let me put them in savory foods. Julian went next. I'm thankful for my daughter who keeps me honest, for Clara's bravery in standing up for herself, for good lawyers and federal prosecutors who take financial crimes seriously, and for the fact that Sophia will eventually learn there are boundaries to chocolate chip usage. Clara felt the weight of expectation when it came to her turn. What was she thankful for? A week ago, she might have said nothing, might have focused on everything falling apart, everything she'd lost. But sitting at this table with these people who'd made space for her without demanding she be anything other than herself. I'm thankful for people who help without trying to control, Clara said quietly. For 8-year-olds who tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient. For lawyers who fight for people who can't afford to fight for themselves. And for discovering that leaving something that's destroying you doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. Sophia beamed. Julian's expression was unreadable but warm. They spent the rest of the evening watching bad movies and eating pie, and not talking about trials or federal charges or anything more serious than whether dolphins really were cooler than sharks. Clara went to bed that night feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The trial started 3 weeks later on a Monday morning that felt like walking toward execution. Clara wore another conservative suit, sat in the witness waiting room with Rebecca while federal prosecutors presented their opening arguments. "They're going to call you second," Rebecca said, "right after the FBI agent who explains what they found during the investigation. You'll establish the personal side, how Nathaniel manipulated you, how he used your signature without your understanding. And then his lawyers will try to prove I'm lying." "Yes, but you're prepared for that. Just stick to the truth and maintain composure. Don't let them make you angry or defensive." When they called Clara to the stand, the courtroom felt massive and suffocating simultaneously. She took the oath, sat down, and looked directly at the federal prosecutor who'd be questioning her first. "Please state your name for the record." "Clara Marie Bennett Cross." "And how do you know the defendant?" "He's my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband." The prosecutor walked her through the marriage, how they met, how quickly Nathaniel had moved things forward, how isolated she'd become. Clara described the pattern of control disguised as care, the way he'd made her feel stupid for asking questions, the systematic way he'd positioned himself as the authority on everything. Then came the documents. One by one, the prosecutor showed Clara her signature on loan applications, property transfers, operating agreements. Each time, Clara explained, "He asked me to sign. I trusted him. I didn't read it." "Why didn't you read documents worth millions of dollars before signing them?" "Because he told me I wouldn't understand them. Because questioning him meant I didn't trust him. Because for 7 years he made me believe my value was in being supportive, not in being smart enough to understand business." She could feel Nathaniel's eyes on her from the defense table, could sense his lawyers preparing to tear her apart, but she kept her focus on the prosecutor, on the truth, on refusing to be ashamed of having trusted someone who'd systematically destroyed her ability to trust herself. The cross-examination was brutal. Nathaniel's lead attorney was a woman in her 50s who clearly saw Clara as the enemy. "Mrs. Cross, you lived in a penthouse worth $12 million, correct?" "Yes." "Wore designer clothes? Attended charity galas? Vacationed in Europe?" "Yes." "And you want this jury to believe you were a victim while living a lifestyle most people can only dream of?" Clara took a breath. Rebecca had prepared her for this. "I had access to money, but not control over it. I had nice things, but not independence. You can be materially comfortable and still be in a prison." "A prison with a Chanel wardrobe and a personal driver?" "Yes. Because control isn't about what you have. It's about what you're allowed to choose." The attorney tried to rattle her with the leaked text messages, with moments where Clara had seemed happy in the marriage, with evidence that she'd benefited from Nathaniel's fraud. Each time, Clara acknowledged the truth without accepting the implication. "Yes, I benefited. I also didn't know the money was stolen. Both things are true. You expect us to believe you signed dozens of documents without reading them?" "I expect you to believe that someone who spent 7 years being told she wasn't smart enough to understand business might eventually stop trying to understand. That's what systematic manipulation looks like." By the time Clara stepped down from the stand, she was exhausted but still standing. She'd told her truth. Whether the jury believed her was out of her control. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Clara attended every day, watching witnesses testify, hearing evidence presented, seeing Nathaniel's defense slowly crumble under the weight of facts. The security footage from his office played for the jury, hours of Clara asking questions and being dismissed, signing documents under pressure, looking uncomfortable and uncertain. The offshore accounts were exposed, showing millions moved to untraceable corporations. Former employees testified about forged appraisals and inflated valuations. The FBI agent walked through a paper trail that damned Nathaniel at every turn. And through it all, Nathaniel maintained his composure, played the role of wrongly accused businessman, victim of a vindictive ex-wife and overzealous prosecutors. But Clara could see the cracks. The way his jaw tightened when damaging evidence emerged. The way his eyes went cold and calculating when witnesses contradicted his story. The mask was slipping. Closing arguments happened on a Friday. The federal prosecutor summarized the evidence methodically, building an undeniable case of systematic fraud. Nathaniel's attorney argued reasonable doubt, attacked Clara's credibility, painted the whole thing as a conspiracy driven by personal vendettas. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, Clara was sitting between Rebecca and Julian in the courtroom. Sophia had insisted on coming despite the serious nature of the proceedings, and sat on Julian's other side drawing pictures of what she imagined justice looked like. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor." Clara's heart hammered as the jury foreman stood. "On count 1, wire fraud. How do you find?" "Guilty." "Count 2, bank fraud." "Guilty." All 12 counts. Guilty on every single charge. Clara felt the room tilt. Nathaniel's face went pale, then flushed with barely controlled rage. His attorneys immediately began preparing appeals motions. But it was over. The jury had spoken. Sentencing wouldn't happen for another 6 weeks. But the verdict was in. Nathaniel Cross, billionaire businessman, was a convicted felon. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Mrs. Cross, how do you feel about the verdict?" Clara stopped, looked directly at the cameras, and spoke words she'd been rehearsing in her mind for weeks. "I feel like justice happened. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to matter." She took a breath. For any woman watching this who's in a relationship where someone makes her feel small, makes her question herself, makes her believe she's not smart enough or strong enough to survive alone, you are. You're stronger than the person trying to convince you otherwise. And leaving doesn't make you weak. Staying in something that's destroying you does. Patricia Winters was in the crowd of reporters. She caught Clara's eye and nodded once. Acknowledgement, respect, solidarity. Rebecca pulled Clara away before more questions could come. In the car back to Julian's building, Clara finally let herself cry. Not sad tears, relief tears, exhaustion tears. 7 years of carrying Nathaniel's lies and manipulation, and she'd finally put them down. "You did it," Rebecca said quietly. "He's going away for a long time." "How long?" Federal sentencing guidelines suggest 15 to 20 years given the amount of fraud and number of victims. "He'll appeal, obviously, but Clara, you're free. Legally, financially, emotionally, you're free." Free. The word felt foreign and wonderful and terrifying. Back at the apartment, Sophia had made a "Congratulations on Justice" banner using construction paper and markers. It was crooked and misspelled congratulations, but it was the most beautiful thing Clara had seen. "We're celebrating," Julian announced. "Pizza, ice cream, whatever you want. I want to sleep for 3 days." "We can arrange that too." That night, after Sophia went to bed and the pizza boxes were cleared away, Clara and Julian sat on the terrace despite the December cold. The city sparkled below them, indifferent to human dramas. "What happens now?" Julian asked. "Divorce gets finalized. Asset division happens. I figure out what my life looks like." Clara wrapped her coat tighter. "Rebecca thinks I'll end up with around $18 million after legal fees and taxes. I can't even conceive of that much money. It's what you're entitled to, what you earned by surviving 7 years of marriage to someone who systematically hurt you." Clara thought about that number, about what it represented, not just financial security, but freedom to choose what came next without desperation driving the decisions. "I'm going to buy Maggie's diner," she said suddenly. Julian looked surprised. "The place where you work. She's been wanting to retire for years but can't afford to. I'm going to buy it from her at a fair price, let her retire with actual security, and run the place myself." Clara felt certainty settling into her bones. "I'm good at that work. I like it. And it's mine. Something that has nothing to do with Nathaniel or his money or trying to fit into a world that never wanted me anyway." "What about the rest of the 18 million? Investments, I guess? I'll hire someone boring and trustworthy to manage it. Set up a fund for women leaving abusive marriages who need legal help they can't afford. Actually do something useful with money instead of just having it sit in accounts making more money." Clara looked at Julian. "Is that stupid? Should I be planning something more ambitious?" "I think it's exactly right. I think you're building a life that fits who you actually are instead of who someone else wanted you to be. Julian smiled. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. The words shouldn't have meant as much as they did, but after 7 years of never hearing them from Nathaniel, of never being enough or right or worthy of pride, hearing them now from someone who'd watched her fight her way free felt like something shifting into place. Can I ask you something? Clara said. Anything. Why did you really help me? The truth, not the version about your wife or Sophia or making better choices this time. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because I recognized something in you that first night on the terrace. Something I saw in my wife before she died and wished I'd paid attention to sooner. You were drowning and pretending you could swim, and I knew what it looked like when someone stopped pretending and decided to fight for air instead. He looked at her directly. I helped because I could, because I had resources you needed, because standing by and watching felt like being complicit. That's the honest answer. And now? Why let me stay after the trial's over? Because Sophia's right. You're family now. Or you could be, if you want. Julian's voice was careful, uncertain in a way Clara had never heard from him. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting gratitude or obligation or... This isn't me trying to replace Nathaniel's control with my own. But if you want to stay while you figure out what's next, you're welcome here for as long as you need. Clara felt something in her chest crack open. Not breaking, but blooming. I'd like that. Not forever. But for now, while I'm learning how to be just Clara instead of somebody's something, then stay. Figure yourself out. Buy your diner. Build your life. Julian stood, offered his hand to help her up. And when you're ready, you'll know. You'll know who you are and what you want and where you belong. You don't need anyone else to tell you. Nathaniel's sentencing happened 6 weeks later. The judge gave him 18 years in federal prison. His lawyers filed appeals that would keep him tied up in legal battles for years. But the verdict stood. The sentence stood. Clara didn't attend the sentencing. She was at the diner, her diner now, training new staff and learning how to run a business on her own terms. Patricia Winter's article came out the week after sentencing. It was thoughtful, nuanced, examining how financial fraud thrived when women were systematically discouraged from understanding business. How men like Nathaniel built empires on manipulation and called it marriage. How the system enabled abuse by treating wives as accessories rather than independent people with their own legal agency. The piece went viral. Clara's phone exploded with interview requests, speaking invitations, offers from publishers wanting her to write a book. She ignored most of them, talked to a few who seemed genuinely interested in the larger issues rather than sensationalized scandal. Used her platform deliberately, carefully, to talk about coercive control and financial abuse and the way isolation happened so gradually you didn't recognize the walls until they'd already closed in. The divorce finalized in March. Clara walked out of the courthouse legally free, $18 million richer, and completely uncertain about what came next. She moved into her own apartment 3 blocks from the diner. Small, modest, nothing like the penthouse she'd shared with Nathaniel. But it was hers. Every piece of furniture chosen deliberately. Every decision made without asking permission or doubting herself. Sophia cried when Clara moved out, which made Clara cry, which made Julian awkwardly try to comfort them both, while clearly also sad about the change. You're still coming for Sunday dinners, though, right? Sophia demanded through tears. Every Sunday, Clara promised. And you can come to the diner anytime you want. Free pancakes for life. With chocolate chips? With chocolate chips. Life settled into a new rhythm. Running the diner, Sunday dinners with Julian and Sophia, therapy twice a week to unpack 7 years of manipulation, slowly rebuilding relationships with old friends she'd lost touch with during the marriage. It wasn't perfect. Some days Clara still caught herself questioning decisions, still heard Nathaniel's voice in her head telling her she wasn't smart enough or capable enough. Some days the weight of everything that had happened crushed down and she could barely get out of bed. But those days got less frequent, got easier to push through. And the good days, the days where she laughed with customers and made her own choices and felt solid in her own skin, those started to outnumber the hard ones. A year after the trial, Clara was closing up the diner when Julian appeared at the door. Sophia wasn't with him, which was unusual for a weeknight. Everything okay? Clara asked, letting him in. Yeah, can we talk? They sat in a back booth, the one Clara always thought of as hers. Julian looked nervous, which was strange. She'd never seen him nervous. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to know you can say no without it changing anything between us, without it making things weird or awkward or—" "Julian, just say it." He took a breath. "I'm in love with you. Have been for months, maybe longer. And I know the timing is terrible. I know you're still figuring out who you are outside of Nathaniel's shadow. I know you might not feel the same way, but I needed you to know, because hiding it felt dishonest, and you deserve honesty from the people in your life." Clara stared at him, processing. She'd known there was something between them, moments of connection that felt like more than friendship, the way Sophia's observations about her father's smiles had been accurate. But hearing it said plainly, directly, without games or manipulation— "I don't know if I can do this yet," Clara said carefully. "I don't know how to be in a relationship without it becoming about someone else controlling me. I don't know how to trust that someone wanting me isn't the same as someone wanting to own me." "I know, that's okay." "Is it? Because I might never be ready. I might always be too damaged or too careful or too scared." Julian reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. "Clara, you're not damaged. You're healing. Those are different things, and I'm not asking for a relationship right now. I'm just telling you the truth about how I feel and letting you decide what, if anything, you want to do with that information." "What if I don't want to do anything with it? What if I want to keep things exactly as they are? Then we keep Sunday dinners and friendship and being family without the romantic part. I can live with that. I'd rather have you in my life as a friend than not have you at all." Clara studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. Found nothing but honesty and patience and genuine care. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Take all the time you need. Take years if that's what it takes. I'm not going anywhere." He left her sitting in the empty diner, surrounded by the life she was building for herself. And for the first time since she'd walked out of that birthday party, Clara felt like she had actual choices. Not just escaping bad options, but choosing good ones. She didn't have to decide about Julian tonight, didn't have to know what she wanted or who she was or where she was going. She just had to keep showing up, keep choosing herself, keep believing she was worth the effort of healing. The rest would come when it was ready. Nathaniel's first appeal was denied 4 months later. His second appeal was still pending, but legal experts agreed it would likely fail too. He'd spend the next 18 years in federal prison, his empire dismantled, his reputation destroyed. Clara felt nothing when she heard the news. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even relief. Just a kind of distant acknowledgement that justice had run its course and she was no longer part of that story. She was writing her own story now. And it was messier and smaller and infinitely more real than anything she'd lived through with Nathaniel. On a Tuesday morning 2 years after the trial, Clara opened the diner to find Sophia waiting outside with a handmade card. "What's this?" Clara asked, unlocking the door. "It's your happy anniversary." "Anniversary of what?" "Of the day you chose to be brave instead of safe. Daddy told me the exact date because I wanted to celebrate it." Sophia handed over the card, which featured a crayon drawing of Clara walking away from a burning building labeled "Mean Eyes Man's Lies." "You saved yourself. That's worth celebrating." Clara felt tears threaten. This kid, this beautiful, wise kid, had decided that leaving Nathaniel deserved commemoration like a birthday or graduation. "Thank you," Clara managed. Thank you." "You're welcome. Also, Dad wants to know if you're still coming for dinner Sunday because he's making your favorite. And if you say no, he'll be sad, but he'll pretend he's not sad, which is worse than just being sad." Clara laughed. "Tell him I'll be there." "Cool. Also, he wanted me to say that he's still in love with you, but he's patient and there's no pressure, but I think he's lying about the no pressure part because he gets a weird face when you're around, like he's trying really hard not to do something he wants to do." "Sophia, I'm just reporting facts." The girl grinned and ran off before Clara could respond. That Sunday, Clara showed up for dinner with wine and homemade dessert. Sophia immediately demanded they play cards before eating, which turned into a cutthroat game of rummy that lasted an hour. Over dinner, Julian told stories about work. Sophia talked about school drama involving friend groups and lunch table politics. Clara contributed stories from the diner, regular customers, odd orders, the time someone tried to pay for coffee with a live chicken. It felt like family. Real family, built on choice and care rather than obligation or control. After Sophia went to bed, Claire and Julian cleaned up together in comfortable silence. She told me what she said to you this morning, Julian said, drying dishes, about me being in love with you and having a weird face. I'm sorry. I told her to drop it, but she's 8 and has no filter, Clara finished. I know, it's okay. Is it? Clara set down the dish she was washing and turned to face him. I'm not ready for a relationship. I might not be ready for a long time, but I want you to know that there's something here. Something that could be more than friendship if I ever get to a place where I can handle it. That's enough, Julian said quietly. That's more than enough. Is it? Because I don't want to string you along or make you wait for something that might never happen. You're not stringing me along. You're being honest about where you are. And I'm choosing to stick around anyway because being your friend is worth more than not being in your life at all. He smiled slightly. Besides, Sophia's already decided your family. I can't break her heart by letting you disappear. Clara stepped closer, rose on her toes, and kissed him, brief and gentle and full of possibility. When she pulled back, Julian looked stunned. What was that for? For being patient, for not pushing, for letting me figure myself out without trying to tell me who I should be. Clara smiled. And because I wanted to. Because choosing to kiss someone I actually want to kiss instead of someone who expects it feels revolutionary. You can choose that anytime, Julian said. Anytime you want. No expectations. No pressure. Clara kissed him again, longer this time, and felt something settle into place. Not love yet. She wasn't ready for that word. Might not be for years. But trust. Partnership. The foundation of something that could become love when she was finally ready to build it. 3 years after walking out of that birthday party, Clara stood in her diner during the morning rush, serving coffee and taking orders and belonging to herself completely. The legal battles were over. The trauma was healing. The future was uncertain, but genuinely hers to choose. Nathaniel was in prison and would be for another 15 years. His appeals had all failed. His empire had been dissolved, assets liquidated to compensate victims. He'd become a cautionary tale, a case study in fraud and manipulation. Clara barely thought about him anymore. She thought about the diner, about her customers, about Sunday dinners with Julian and Sophia, about the women's shelter she'd helped fund with part of her settlement, about the small, deliberate life she was building that looked nothing like the one she'd lost, but felt infinitely more real. And she thought about choices, how she'd spent 7 years having them made for her, and how every choice she made now, no matter how small, was an act of reclaiming herself. The diner door opened. A young woman walked in, looking lost and uncertain, eyes that recognized pain even when the rest of her tried to hide it. Clara saw herself in that woman, saw the invisible walls closing in, the careful performance of being fine, the quiet desperation of someone drowning while everyone around her assumed she could swim. Coffee? Clara asked, already pouring a cup. Please, and... The woman's voice cracked slightly. Is it true you used to be married to Nathaniel Cross? Yeah, it's true. How did you leave? How did you know when it was time? Clara set down the coffee cup and looked at this stranger who was asking the question she'd once needed someone to answer. You know, it's time when staying feels harder than the fear of leaving, when you realize survival doesn't count as living. Clara slid the coffee across the counter. This one's on the house. And if you need to talk, I'm here until closing. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Clara smiled, understanding more than this stranger realized. We help each other. That's how we survive. That's how we win. Outside the window, Chicago moved through another ordinary day. People rushing to work, living their small, complicated lives, making choices they'd either celebrate or regret later. And in the diner, Clara Bennett, no longer cross, never again anyone's possession, poured coffee and took orders and existed in the fullness of her own free, messy, hard-won life. She'd been broken. She'd been manipulated. She'd been used and controlled and nearly destroyed. But she'd survived. And surviving, Clara had learned, was just the beginning. The real work was choosing to build something worth surviving for, and she was doing that every single day.